Chapter 161, Invitation from the Divine Might Marquis. At dawn the next day, Duan Lingtian went to Paladin Academy as usual. Everything seemed extremely calm. But Duan Lingtian knew that all of this was only the calm before the storm. Presently, there was an unknown amount of undercurrents flowing towards him in secret. At noon, Duan Lingtian ate at the cafeteria with Xiao Yu and the others as usual. Suddenly, a higher grade student walked over swiftly from afar and passed an invitation to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, the third prince will hold a banquet for the young talents of the imperial city at his estate 10 days from now. This is the invitation he ordered me to pass to you. He didn't wait for Duan Lingtian's reply, he put down the invitation before turning around and leaving the moment he finished speaking. Third prince. Duan Lingtian opened the invitation, and on it were just some polite greetings. The affixed signatures was, Chu Yong. Duan Lingtian had heard before that within the Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial family, the surname Chu was the most respected. Haha, Duan Lingtian, the third prince is known as one who has a passion for talented individuals. Every single one of the young talents that were invited by him were dragons among men. This time he's probably taken a fancy towards you. Xiao Xuan laughed heartily. Duan Lingtian put away the invitation and curiously asked, what sort of person is this third prince? The invitation was personally written by third prince Chu Yong, and its tone was extremely casual, it didn't contain one bit of a condescending tone, and it was more akin to treating Duan Lingtian as an equal. As far as Duan Lingtian was concerned, this was extremely difficult to come by. The third prince is famous in the imperial city for being easygoing. He has one of the highest public voices among the crown princes. Xiao Yu slowly said, in the past few years, His Majesty the Emperor has grown old with age and has been constantly bedridden, and it is precisely the moment for the substitution of the Emperor. All of the crown princes, including the third prince, secretly compete with each other. Duan Lingtian, you have to consider carefully before going to the banquet of the third prince 10 days from now, because if you go, you'll become a thorn in the eyes of the other princes. The fifth prince is among them. The fifth prince is one of the top candidates for the title of emperor, so if you side with the third prince, then even if the fifth prince knows that you're a direct descendant of the Duan clan, it's likely that he would still openly offend you. Your natural talent is too shocking, so he would probably see you as a potential threat and would kill you before you have the chance to grow. Xiao Xuan finished speaking in a single breath. According to him, Duan Lingtian should casually find an excuse and not attend the banquet, as there were some matters that shouldn't be touched. Because once they were touched, they would attract a calamity to you. Even the 3 great clans of the imperial city wouldn't normally allow their direct descendants to be swept into the disputes and struggles for the title of emperor. Fifth prince. A trace of a smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth and a sharp light flashed within his eyes. I'm only attending a banquet, and he would need to kill me before I grow just for doing that. Duan Lingtian, you can't really be thinking of attending the banquet, right? You have to think this through carefully. Xiao Shu originally thought that Duan Lingtian would accept his suggestion and not attend the banquet. But looking at Duan Lingtian's intentions now, it would seem that he really planned to attend the banquet. Why shouldn't I go? Isn't it just a meal? Duan Lingtian asked indifferently. Just a meal. The corners of Xiao Xuan's mouth twitched, and he gave Xiao Yu a concealed gaze. But unfortunately, even when Xiao Yu tried, Duan Lingtian only brushed off Xiao Yu's persuasions with a smile and paid no attention to it. For the entire afternoon, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged on a large tree at the side of the martial arts practice ground. He had consumed a origin-increasing pill and was quietly cultivating. As long as he had free time, he would practically dedicate it all to cultivation, as what he wanted to do now was allow his cultivation to break through to the origin core stage as fast as possible. Once he breaks through to the origin core stage, he will be able to become a grade 8 alchemist and refine a grade 8 spirit cleansing pill, which will allow Shang Quan's cultivation to recover to the void prying stage. At that time, the difficulties he was currently facing would be solved easily with the edge of a blade. Unknowingly, dusk fell upon the lands. Duan Lingtian came back to his senses before jumping off the large tree and leaving Paladin Academy with Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan. It's the Divine Might Marquis Estate's carriage. Xiao Xuan's sharp gaze recognized the carriage that was parked before Paladin Academy's gates. There were 2 other people who rode Fergana horses standing beside the carriage. One of them was a middle-aged soldier in light armor, and beside him was a young man in casual clothing. The young man was around the age of 20 and he had a Paladin Academy student badge on his waist. When he noticed Duan Lingtian walk out of Paladin Academy, he said something to the middle-aged soldier. "Father, that violet-clothed youth is Duan Lingtian." Duan Lingtian had only just exited Paladin Academy's front gate when he noticed the two people beside the Divine Might Marquis Estate's carriage spur their horses towards him. After a short moment, the two of them got off their horses. The middle-aged soldier nodded to Duan Lingtian before politely saying, "May I inquire if you're young Master Lingtian?" "You are." Duan Lingtian had a face full of questions, as he didn't recognize this person. "I'm Pang Wu, the Vice General under the command of Grand General Ni. This is my son, Pang Rui. I've come here today on the orders of the Grand General to invite young Master Lingtian to get together at the Divine Might Marquis Estate," Pang Wu said respectfully. He didn't have even a trace of looking down upon Duan Lingtian for his young age. "As the Grand General, you speak of the current Divine Might Marquis, Ni Yuan?" Duan Lingtian's brows knitted as he asked curiously. "Exactly." Pang Wu hurriedly nodded. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked. Could it be that Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan knew of his true identity? Wait, no, logically speaking, his art of disguising was airtight. Then what could it be? Duan Lingtian carried a trace of doubt as he bid his farewells to Xiao Xuan and Xiao Yu before getting on the Divine Might Marquis Estate's carriage. "Vice General Pang Wu, do you know why the Divine Might Marquis wants to talk to me?" Duan Lingtian pulled open the carriage's curtain and asked Pang Wu, who was outside. But unfortunately, even Pang Wu was unaware, as he was only under orders to bring Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian had a different feeling when he once again arrived at the Divine Might Marquis Estate, as this time he arrived at the Divine Might Marquis Estate with his real appearance. Duan Lingtian once again met Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan within the audience hall of the Divine Might Marquis Estate. You're the son of my brother Ru Feng, Duan Lingtian." Duan Lingtian noticed that Ni Yuan was extremely excited when he saw him. Duan Lingtian's heart trembled as he thought about what Ni Yuan had said. Could it be that this Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan had an unordinary relationship with his deadbeat father? "Greetings, Marquis." Duan Lingtian lightly nodded to Ni Yuan. This could be considered his way of bowing and paying his respects. Ni Yuan didn't mind Duan Lingtian's lack of respect one bit. He swiftly walked up to Duan Lingtian, then he extended his hands to grab onto Duan Lingtian's shoulders and gave them a pat before laughing heartily. "Ru Feng has a good son, Ru Feng has such a good son." Ni Yuan's laughter was filled with relief and not 1 ounce of fakeness. Duan Lingtian's heart felt warm. It looked like his deadbeat father had quite a relationship with the Divine Might Marquis. "Marquis, you were friends with my father?" Duan Lingtian had a questioning expression. "Come, have a seat. I'll tell you slowly." Ni Yuan led Duan Lingtian to sit with him at the side before telling Duan Lingtian about his past with Duan Rufeng with a face full of smiles. As Ni Yuan spoke, he had an extremely joyous expression, he seemed to become younger as he spoke. Slowly, Duan Lingtian came to an understanding. So his deadbeat father was best friends with Ni Yuan. The two of them had entered Paladin Academy as students during the same year and went from being opponents to getting to know each other, then they finally became best friends and best brothers. "If it wasn't for me going out to war that year, I wouldn't have allowed you and your mother to travel off to distant parts. Now that we speak of it, this matter is all my fault and I feel guilty to Brother Ru Feng," Ni Yuan said guiltily. "Marquis, this has nothing to do with you, so you don't have to blame yourself." Duan Lingtian shook his head with a smile. He could feel how Ni Yuan was genuinely concerned for him. "Little Tian, you don't have to be courteous in front of me. When your father was still around, we called each other brothers, so in the future you can call me Uncle Ni," Ni Yuan said, with eyes that had a trace of doting within. "Uncle Ni." Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile, as he had heartfelt admiration for Ni Yuan. That deadbeat father of his had vanished for so many years, so the fact that Ni Yuan was still able to love him to such an extent was truly difficult to believe. "Father, I heard Lingtian has come." Just at this moment, a young man slowly walked in from outside the audience hall. His voice was mixed with a trace of pleasant surprise. It was precisely the son of Ni Yuan, Ni Fen. "Little Tian, this is my son, Ni Fen. Now that I mention it, he even carried you when you were still a baby," Ni Yuan introduced. As expected of the child of Uncle Ru Feng and Aunt Ru, his appearance is handsome and extraordinary, and he is slightly similar to Uncle Ru Feng from those years. Ni Fen couldn't help but praise Duan Lingtian when he saw him. Big brother Ni, you're too kind. Even with Duan Ling Tian's thick skin, he couldn't help but feel his face grow hot. Ni Feng said, with a smile, little Tian, when father heard of the news about you yesterday, he still didn't dare believe it. After it was confirmed, he sent Uncle Peng to bring you over right away. He couldn't help but sigh in surprise at what Duan Ling Tian did within the Paladin Academy yesterday. A mere youth at the age of 18 had a cultivation that had actually stepped into the 9th level of the core formation stage. As for the matter of Duan Ling Tian killing Duan Ling Xing, he didn't pay much attention to it, as Duan Ling Xing was nothing in his opinion. Ru Feng would surely be extremely gratified if he knew he had a son like you. Ni Yuan, the dignified and imposing Grand General, completely expressed the amiableness of an elder in front of Duan Ling Tian. I can hear your voices from far in the distance. Is this the son of Ru Feng? Suddenly, an aged figure walked into the audience hall from outside. Duan Ling Tian glanced over to see that person who had entered was precisely the senior marquis. The senior marquis was stunned when his gaze landed on Duan Ling Tian. You. A bitter smile appeared on the corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth, as he knew that the old man had recognized him. More accurately speaking, the old man recognized that he was precisely the Ling Tian that refined the poison-curing medicinal pill the other day. Although the old man's origin energy was suppressed by the dark nether minx poison, his void-prying stage expert's spiritual sense was still present within him, and by relying on his acute senses, he was naturally able to discern his aura to be exactly the same as the Ling Tian's from the other day. Father, what is it? Ni Yuan had a face full of questions when he saw the old man's expression. 161 Chapter 162, Heart of the Strong. Ni Fen looked at his grandfather as well, as he noticed that the atmosphere seemed off. Are you going to do it, or shall I? The old man glanced at Duan Ling Tian with a profound expression. The corners of his mouth held a smile. It was as if he was controlling everything with his own two hands. Ni Yuan and his son were even more curious, as they wondered what mystery were Duan Ling Tian and the old man speaking about. Senior Marquis, why don't you do it? Duan Ling Tian was quite embarrassed for being exposed by a sly old fox like him. If it wasn't for my senses that far surpass the ordinary person's, I'm afraid even I wouldn't have been able to notice. Needless to say, your methods of disguise are truly brilliant, Brother Ling Tian. The old man's eyes narrowed, and he lightly smiled as if he were speaking of some unimportant matter. Brother Ling Tian, disguise. Ni Yuan and his son weren't stupid, so they instantly reacted. There was only one youth that could make the old man call him brother, and that was the mysterious youth, Ling Tian, that arrived at the Divine Might Marquis estate 2 months ago and refined the poison-curing medicinal pill for the old man. Little Tian, the brother Ling Tian of that day was actually you. Ni Yuan also noticed that this nephew of his had physical traits and a voice that was similar to the violet-clothed youth with an ordinary appearance from the other day. Instantly, a shocked expression appeared on his face. Is it really Brother Ling Tian? Ni Yuan was stunned as well and was in slight disbelief. Uncle Ni, Big Brother Ni, it's me. I didn't know of the relationship between Uncle Ni and my father before, and I hope you can forgive me for any offense it may have caused. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but smile apologetically. It was really like the saying of when the flood rushed past the Dragon King's temple and their own family members didn't recognize each other. Brother Ling Tian, what are you talking about? If it wasn't for you, this old life of mine would probably be unable to hold on for much longer. The old man shook his head and sighed with a complicated gaze. Never would he have imagined that the youth who refined the poison-curing medicinal pill for him was actually the son of his own son's best friend, Duan Rufeng, from long ago. Senior Marquis, I'm not worthy of being called brother by you. Duan Ling Tian had a bitter smile on his face. It was fine before because he hadn't acknowledged the senior marquis as a relative prior to this, but now that he knew of the relationship between Ni Yuan and his deadbeat father, he didn't dare be presumptuous anymore. If his mother were to know, she would certainly not let him off. Yes, father, little Tian is right. Ni Yuan returned to his senses and looked at Duan Ling Tian before laughing jubilantly. The shock this nephew of his brought to him came in unceasing waves. An 18-year-old 9th level core formation martial artist. An 18-year-old grade 9 alchemist. No matter which halo floated above him, they were each sufficient to cause his name to shock the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom and cause everyone to look up to him. Moreover, both of these halos were now on this youth at the same time. Ru Feng, if you were still alive, you'd probably laugh yourself awake from your sleep, right? Ni Yuan sighed in his heart. Then I'll call you Little Tien from now on, and you call me Grandfather Ni. How about it? The old man smiled as he looked at Duan Ling Tien. Grandfather Ni. Duan Ling Tien heaved a sigh of relief and smiled at the old man. Ni Fen stood at the side and gazed at Duan Ling Tien, unable to come back to his senses. The shock Duan Ling Tien gave him was too huge. Under the invitation of the Marquis family, Duan Ling Tien stayed at the Divine Might Marquis estate to have a meal. Little Tien, is your mother in the imperial city as well? Ni Yuan asked. Yes. Duan Ling Tien nodded. Have you all returned to the Duan clan? Ni Yuan seemed to have thought of something as he asked this. No. Duan Ling Tien shook his head. Then you too. Ni Yuan was dazed. I bought a courtyard house in the inner city, and our family is staying there. Duan Ling Tien said, with a smile. You killed Duan Ling Xing and revealed a strength at the 9th level of the core formation stage. With your current natural talent, the Duan clan should have sent someone to invite you back, right? Ni Yuan's gaze flickered, as he was extremely knowledgeable about the way those large clans worked. The natural talent that Duan Ling Tien exhibited was sufficient for the Duan clan to get off their high horse and rope him in. Uncle Ni, you predict like a prophet. The Duan clan did indeed send someone to be an emissary, but I refused. Duan Ling Tien spoke in an extremely casual manner, and there was no fluctuation in his mood when he spoke of how he refused the Duan clan. It's good that you refused them, because that Duan clan actually forced a widowed mother and her son to leave. Now let them go regret it. Ni Yuan didn't have a favorable impression of the Duan clan. My Divine Might Marquis estate isn't small, why don't you and your mother move in? There aren't many people within the imperial city that would dare act rashly here. As he finished speaking, Ni Yuan had a face full of confidence. Uncle Ni, I've gotten used to my own courtyard house, and I don't want to trouble you. Duan Ling Tien shook his head and smiled as he politely refused Ni Yuan's good intention. Little Tien, you killed Duan Ling Xing, so Duan Rulei won't let it go so easily. Are you and your mother safe at that courtyard house? Do you need me to send people to protect you? Ni Yuan was slightly worried. Don't worry, Uncle Ni, they aren't capable of finding that house. Meanwhile, Duan Ling Tien had finished eating his fill and stood up. Uncle Ni, thank you for the dinner. It's time for me to return home now, otherwise, my mother will be worried. I'll send you out. Ni Yuan stood up as well and sent Duan Ling Tien out of the Divine Might Marquis estate with Ni Fen. The guard soldiers outside the Divine Might Marquis estate's main gate couldn't help their pupils from constricting. Who the heck was this youth? He's actually able to make the Marquis and his son personally send him out. Uncle Ni, Big Brother Ni, I'll be leaving now. Duan Ling Tien bid his farewells to the two before his body moved out like a spirit serpent, scurrying into the end of the road before disappearing. Father, never had I imagined that Uncle Ru Feng's son would be even more heaven-defying than him. Only when Duan Ling Tien's figure disappeared before him did Ni Fen sigh. An 18-year-old 9th-level core formation martial artist, and a grade 9 alchemist. Moreover, his disposition is even more tenacious than Brother Ru Feng's all those years ago. And most important of all, after knowing of the relationship between his father and I, he seemed wanting to avoid any ill will by being unwilling to accept my help, as if he was deeply afraid of owing me a favor. Ni Yuan laughed bitterly. This child, these years have really been tough on him. Favor. Ni Fen's face froze for a moment. He's helped grandfather cured his poison, so it seems we owe him more, right? Duan Ling Tien made a few circles within the inner city, and only after he was sure that no one was following him did he return home. He still sighed slightly with emotion as he recalled what happened today. He still had the heart to use the Divine Might Marquis estate in the past, but now that he knew of the relationship between his deadbeat father and the Divine Might Marquis, he instead dispersed all thoughts of using the Divine Might Marquis estate. Although most of the difficulties he currently faced would be easily solved with the edge of a blade once he obtained the backing of the Divine Might Marquis estate, he wasn't willing to have it that way. His gaze wasn't limited to this tiny Crimson Sky Kingdom, and in the future he would leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom to head to a much vaster world. At that time, it would be impossible for him to have an existence like the Divine Might Marquis estate to rely upon. So he now took all the difficulties he faced and made them a test for himself. He would rely on himself to deal with everything, and not gain help from another. Only when he himself was strong would he be truly strong. Of course, Duan Ling Tien wasn't a headstrong person, and if he really needed to use his trump card, the Divine Might Marquis estate, he would use it suitably. Duan Lingtian had only just returned when the three beauties in his home came to greet him with faces filled with worry. His mother was the first to question him. Tian, why are you home so late today? Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. Mom, I was asked to dinner by Uncle Ni. Uncle Ni. Li Ru didn't react for a moment. The Divine Might Marquis of the Divine Might Marquis estate, Ni Yuan, Duan Lingtian said. Big brother Ni Yuan. Li Ru was shocked, then a light smile appeared on her face. So many years have passed, and he's already inherited the title of Divine Might Marquis. It's great that he had the heart to invite you over the moment he heard of you. Even Li Ru knew that this son of hers was now someone whose name had spread throughout the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom's imperial city, to the extent it could be said that there wasn't a single soul that didn't know of him. The following 10 days went by peacefully. Besides the Duan clan sending people to wait outside Paladin Academy to convince Duan Lingtian with countless promises and then being repeatedly refused by Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian didn't encounter any special occasion during these 10 days. The Duan clan's second master, Duan Rulei, and the fifth prince of the imperial family seemed to have completely disappeared within a day. At dusk, after bidding his farewells to Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan, Duan Lingtian didn't return home but instead walked towards the S estate. He withdrew the invitation that they ordered someone to send to him and stuffed it into his pocket. As he passed by a small alley, suddenly, hiss hiss, hiss hiss, two small heads protruded out of Duan Lingtian's long sleeve. They were a little black python and a little white python. They were currently flicking their tongues as they moved their eyes to stare at Duan Lingtian, and the gold and silver horns on their heads gleamed with a light luster. You two little fellows, be obedient. Duan Lingtian put the two little pythons back into his sleeve before continuing forward. For safety's sake, he especially brought Little White along when he left home today. Thus, it was equivalent to him having two 4th-level nascent soul bodyguards. Moreover, with Little White's and Little Black's speed and tiny size, even a 5th-level nascent soul martial artist would die at their hands if that martial artist was slightly careless. Although vast, the S estate seemed simple and unadorned from the outside. The S estate was already nearby when, go, a loud shout echoed out from afar, followed by a deafening wave of horse hooves hitting the ground. Duan Lingtian looked over, and what he saw was a blue-clothed young man whipping his Fergana horse as it flew over. Its destination was the S estate as well. Duan Lingtian's face sank, as he noticed that when this person noticed him, the person not only didn't slow down, he instead fiercely whipped the Fergana horse to charge straight towards Duan Lingtian. 162 Chapter 163, Princess Bai Yao. Faced with the Fergana horse that was violently dashing towards him, Duan Lingtian's gaze went cold and he clenched his right hand tightly, the muscles on his hand slightly bulged. If the person were to really spur his horse to collide with Duan Lingtian, then Duan Lingtian wouldn't mind blasting the person and his horse flying. The Fergana horse moved closer. It was only a few meters away from Duan Lingtian now. Nay, the young man on the Fergana horse instantly tightened the reins on his horse, and the Fergana horse stopped a meter away from Duan Lingtian. The young man arrogantly swept Duan Lingtian with his gaze and said, in a condescending tone, "Kid, you're quite brave. Your luck is good. If it wasn't for this being the gate of the third prince's estate, you would have been knocked flying by my crimson blood by now and would surely be dead." Crimson blood was precisely the name the young man called the Fergana horse he sat upon. The meaning behind the young man's speech was none other than saying he had to be considerate because this was the third prince's estate gate, otherwise, Duan Lingtian would have been knocked to death by him. Duan Lingtian looked the young man in the eye with a tranquil gaze, and the corners of his mouth curled into a trace of a light smile. Your luck isn't bad either. When the young man's gaze emitted a puzzled expression, Duan Lingtian turned around and walked towards the third prince's estate's gate. Just like he had said, the young man's luck was indeed not bad. If the young hadn't stopped earlier, he would have been blasted flying along with his horse. This bit of confidence was something Duan Lingtian possessed without a doubt. Lowly commoner. The young man grunted coldly, before spurring his horse to pass Duan Lingtian and arrive at the gate of the third prince's estate before Duan Lingtian. The young man got off his horse and passed his horse's reins to one of the house servants of the third prince's estate, then he handed over his invitation to the middle-aged man who looked like a manager. Under the middle-aged manager's orders, another house servant walked into the estate with the young man, leading the way for the young man. Guest, please present your invitation. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian arrived before the third prince's estate's gate. The middle-aged manager had a smile on his face, as he didn't dare look down upon Duan Lingtian. The young man who had already entered the estate turned around and saw that it was that violet-clothed youth again, and he couldn't help but mock him. Kid, the third prince's estate isn't a place that just anyone has the qualifications to enter. If you don't have an invitation, you should FK off, go home, and drink milk. Duan Lingtian's brows knitted and his eyes emitted a slight sense of fury from this person's repeated provocations. Did he really think that Duan Lingtian was easy to bully? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a sneer as he watched the young man swagger off and disappear before him, then he moved his hand into his pocket and removed the invitation. Duan Lingtian, so your young master Lingtian. The middle-aged manager's eyes lit up when he saw the invitation. He now had a face full of humbleness and reverence. The third prince had left word that if this youth were to come, he must entertain him with the highest level of courtesy, so he didn't dare be discourteous in any way. Young Master Lingtian, please come in. The middle-aged manager took a deep breath before personally leading Duan Lingtian in. Duan Lingtian lightly nodded his head before following behind the middle-aged manager and walking into the third prince's estate. He's Duan Lingtian, only that Duan Lingtian who shot to fame would be able to make the manager personally lead the way. The young man that entered earlier seemed to be the number one of the Su clan's branch descendants, Su Lan, right? He seemed to be mocking Duan Lingtian earlier. Although that Su Lan's strength isn't weak, in terms of natural talent, there's no way he can compare to Duan Lingtian. The house servants whispered in discussion. On his way, Duan Lingtian noticed that the third prince was probably someone that knew how to enjoy life, as the entire vast estate was filled with rare flowers and exotic herbs, and some of them were even rare medicinal materials. Before long, under the lead of the middle-aged manager, Duan Lingtian arrived at a spacious, man-made lake within the inner courtyard. As the sky slowly went dark, the building that stood in the middle of the man-made pool was lit brightly, and sounds of laughter would occasionally echo out from within. That place seemed to be bustling with noise and excitement. The Su clan's young master Su Lan has arrived. In next to no time, a sonorous voice sounded from the front. Su Lan. Duan Lingtian's brows knitted. The young man that provoked him earlier outside the gates was actually a member of the Su clan. No wonder he was so arrogant. However, Xiao Xuan seemed to have mentioned before that the three great clans of the imperial city had always restrained their direct descendant disciples from taking part in the competition for the imperial authority, so with this in mind, Duan Lingtian assumed that this Su Lan wasn't a direct descendant of the Su clan. Greetings, third prince. Greetings, Princess Bai Yao. Under the lead of the middle-aged manager, Duan Lingtian had only just stepped on the wooden bridge that led to the building at the heart of the man-made lake when he heard Su Lan's humble and respectful voice. Princess Bai Yao. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. He had been in the imperial city for a few months now, so he knew of many things about the imperial city in detail. Princess Bai Yao was the daughter that the current emperor doted on the most, and she was publicly acknowledged as the #1 beauty in the imperial city. The #1 beauty in the imperial city. I wonder how she compares to my Kair and little Fei. Curiosity arose within Duan Lingtian's heart. Kair and Li Fei were both the most beautiful women he had seen since arriving on this world. Among the women he'd seen, only the Xiao clan's Xiao Lan, Xiao Yu's angelic beauty of a sister, could compare to Kair and Li Fei. Besides her, Duan Lingtian hadn't seen a single woman who could be compared to Kair and Li Fei. The middle-aged manager walked in with steady steps as he brought Duan Lingtian to the building at the heart of the lake before respectfully saying, "Your Highness, young Master Lingtian has arrived." Instantly, the gaze of the young man who sat at the head of the building in the heart of the lake abruptly shone. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian had just walked into the building. He saw an amiable young man in gold robes sitting at the head. The youth was around the age of 25 or 26 and had an imposing disposition between his brows, completely inheriting the dignified appearance of an imperial family disciple. Third Prince. Duan Lingtian guessed the identity of this person and lightly nodded with a smile. It could be considered as having paid his respects. Just at this moment, the brows of the old man behind the golden-robed young man knitted, and he shouted, in a fierce voice, "Outrageous!" The terrifying sound echoed out by using the method of condensing origin energy into sound, and it directly pierced Duan Lingtian's eardrums. Duan Lingtian's powerful spiritual force instantly dissolved this sound, so he remained unfazed as he calmly swept the old man with his gaze. He then looked at the young girl that was sitting to the right of the third prince. The young girl's age was similar to his, around the age of 18. She had bright eyes, a pretty appearance, and an extraordinary disposition. Those were accompanied by a headful of shoulder-length, beautiful hair that fell behind her like a waterfall, a pair of pretty cheeks that would cause anyone who took a glance at them to be unable to stop themselves from feeling protective of her, and cherry lips that caused others to have the desire to kiss and suck on them for a while. In terms of appearance, this young girl was not one bit inferior to Kair and Li Fei. As expected of the number one beauty in the imperial city, her appearance is more than enough to rival my Kair and little Fei. Duan Lingtian returned to his senses quickly, and he lightly smiled at the young girl. Princess Bai Yao. From Duan Lingtian greeting the third prince, to the old man's fierce shout, then to him paying his respects to Princess Bai Yao, all of this happened in the blink of an eye. The old man's eyes emitted a surprised and bewildered expression. A mere 9th level core formation martial artist was actually able to withstand his move using origin energy condensed into sound. It caused him to feel slight disbelief. Ha. The third prince laughed heartily. I've heard of Brother Lingtian's great name. Now that I've met you, I can see that you're really worthy of such a name. I originally thought that Brother Lingtian would not pay any attention to my invitation, and I didn't think that Brother Lingtian would really come. This is truly a pleasant surprise. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. Third prince, you're too kind. I'm only an ordinary person, and it's an honor to be invited by third prince. Brother Lingtian is neither haughty nor humble at such an age, that's truly hard to come by. Brother Lingtian, please sit. The third prince abruptly stood and directed Duan Lingtian to the seat on the left of the head. This seat was obviously intentionally left empty. Thank you, third prince. Duan Lingtian didn't try to be courteous and directly sat there. Meanwhile, burning gazes from the seats below descended onto Duan Lingtian one by one. The owners of these gazes were basically all 20 to 25-year-old young men with arrogant gazes, and looking at their clothes and disposition, they were obviously individuals of extraordinary birth. They were originally curious about why the third prince would intentionally prepare a seat beside him and who he was leaving the seat for. Now they finally understood that it was left for this youth whose name had recently shot to fame in the imperial city. On one side of the third prince was Princess Bai Yao, and on the other was Duan Lingtian. No one would say anything of Princess Bai Yao being seated there, but Duan Lingtian. Presently, many of the young talents had gazes that emitted discontent. Of course, they didn't dare point their discontent towards the third prince, and thus extremely unfriendly gazes descended upon Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was obviously able to notice these gazes, but he paid no attention to them. His gaze descended upon Su Lan, who was far in the distance. At this moment, Su Lan's gaze was slightly unnatural, as he never imagined that the violet-clothed youth he encountered outside the third prince's estate gate was actually the Duan Lingtian whose name had spread and gave rise to much discussion within the imperial city. However, when he remembered of a matter he had heard about 2 days ago, his heart calmed, and his fierce gaze fearlessly met with Duan Lingtian's. So you're that Duan Lingtian. I heard that the Duan clan repeatedly invited you back but were refused by you. No wonder you don't even have a proper horse and can only walk to the third prince's estate. Su Lan's brows raised as he looked at Duan Lingtian and spoke with a mocking tone. The third prince attaching such importance to Duan Lingtian caused him to feel unhappy in his heart as well, but now it seemed like he had found a way to vent. I've heard of this as well. I was wondering why a direct descendant of the Duan clan would attend the third prince's banquet, so it turned out to be someone who had left the Duan clan on their own accord. Brother Lingtian, nice courage. The eyes of the blue-clothed youth that was sitting opposite of Su Lan narrowed into a line, and although he called Duan Lingtian brother, the mocking intention in his words was something that anyone present could discern. The deeds of Duan Lingtian were spread and discussed animatedly throughout the imperial city lately, so the young talents present had more or less heard of him. If Duan Lingtian was still a direct descendant disciple of the Duan clan, they might have been slightly afraid. However, Duan Lingtian refused to return to the Duan clan. Without the Duan clan's backing, even if his natural talent were even better, even though he had stepped into the 9th level of the core formation stage at the age of 18, so what? The Crimson Sky Kingdom never lacked geniuses, however, the genius that were able to truly, smoothly mature were very few. 163 Chapter 164, Becoming a Public Enemy. When Duan Lingtian had only just appeared, Princess Bai Yao's water-like, beautiful eyes were extremely calm as they gazed at Duan Lingtian, but now they had ripples within. This youth was completely different from those people she usually saw. When faced with the mockery of others, he was still able to stay aloof from the matter and be indifferent. It was difficult to imagine how a youth would actually have such terrifying mental strength. Young Master Duan, Bai Yao has heard of your deeds, and I deeply admire you. Bai Yao will use this tea as wine to toast you. Eventually, Princess Bai Yao spoke, and her clear voice suppressed the mocking voices of the crowd of young talents. Duan Lingtian's gaze slightly flickered, as he noticed that this Princess Bai Yao was helping him. Presently, even the host, the third prince, was looking on coldly from the side and didn't speak up. This Princess Bai Yao is truly pure. It's really rare that she's able to maintain this heart of hers in the imperial family that is full of mutual deception, Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, before raising his wine cup and nodding to Princess Bai Yao. After finishing the wine in his glass with a single gulp, Duan Lingtian laughed in a carefree manner. I heard that Princess Bai Yao was the #1 beauty in the imperial city. Now that I've met you, I see that you're truly deserving of your reputation. I wonder who will be lucky enough to take Princess Bai Yao as his bride in the future. It would absolutely be the fortune that person accumulated for a lifetime. Young Master Duan, you jest. Even Princess Bai Yao, who was accustomed to hearing flattery, couldn't prevent her face from blushing, and her heartbeat increased a little bit. The young talents present looked at the Duan Lingtian with even more envious gazes when they noticed Duan Lingtian and Princess Bai Yao chatting and laughing happily as if no one else was present. I raise my cup in toast to everyone who granted me the favor of their presence in my banquet today. The third prince, who had never spoken and maintained silence as he waited for events to unfold, noticed the atmosphere turning slightly off, so he raised his wine cup to break the atmosphere that was filled with sour envy. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth raised as they curled into a light angle. As expected, the third prince was no simple figure. Duan Lingtian was suspicious that the third prince intended on probing him from the moment he asked him to sit on that seat. However, he wasn't able to fully wrap his head around the matter. If the third prince was really probing him, then what was the point of doing this? Duan Lingtian lightly shook his head and decided not to think about it anymore, as he only came here to have a free meal. What did everything else have to do with him? As long as these people didn't go overboard, he would only take it as a group of mad dogs barking. If they were to go overboard, then he wouldn't be someone that was easy to offend. As he thought up to this point, Duan Lingtian's calm gaze flashed with a strand of dense, cold light. During the banquet, most of the young talents present were mostly trying to strike a conversation with Princess Bai Yao. As far as they were concerned, if they were able to obtain her, they would be able to move up rapidly in the world and soar into the sky in one go. After all, Princess Bai Yao was the daughter that the current emperor doted on the most, so if one of them were to become the emperor's son-in-law, then it would also mean that they'd have to struggle for 30 years less. Only Duan Lingtian drank and ate by himself, as the way the group of young talents acted was no different than a circus to him. The surprise in the third prince's eyes grew even stronger, as he noticed that this Duan Lingtian was even more unfathomable than he'd imagined. He originally thought that even if Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao was high, a mere youth would be lacking in life experiences and thus could be used. However, he now realized that this youth's wisdom surpassed any one of these other young talents' wisdom. Even he was slightly unable to see through this youth, and he suddenly felt that it would be practically impossible for him to control this youth. Brother Lingtian, the third prince abruptly spoke, and a stream of wisdom flashed within his eyes. The entire building at the heart of the pond went silent the moment the third prince spoke. Even the group of young talents that was showing off their elegant demeanor to their heart's content in front of Princess Bai Yao had now restrained themselves. And their gazes once again descended upon Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian originally thought that he could eat and drink in peace before leaving without a care, but when he noticed the smile in the corners of the third prince's mouth, his heart jerked and he suddenly had a bad premonition. As expected, the third prince gazed at Duan Lingtian and lightly smiled. As a matter of fact, this sister of mine is at the age of marriage. The person she admires the most in her life is your father, the peerless genius, Duan Rufeng, whose name previously spread across the Crimson Sky Kingdom. She even saw him as her idol. She even once said that if she were to marry in this life, then it would surely be to a figure of shocking talent like Duan Rufeng. In my opinion, the elegant demeanor that Brother Lingtian revealed now even surpasses that of your father years ago. The third prince's speech seemed to point to something as he glanced at Duan Lingtian with a dubious gaze. Third brother, what nonsense are you speaking of? Princess Bai Yao's face froze, as she was completely stunned. When had she ever said something like this? Before long, she noticed that the young talents present now looked at Duan Lingtian with gazes filled with a sense of hostility. She was intelligent, so she immediately understood her third brother's intentions. She was slightly enraged within her heart, but in the end she didn't say anything due to being hindered by the familial bonds of brother and sister. A bitter smile appeared on the corners of her mouth when she noticed Duan Lingtian looking at her with a questioning gaze, and she lightly shook her head. When Duan Lingtian looked at Princess Bai Yao, he noticed innocence from within Princess Bai Yao's gaze, and at the same time he could feel her helplessness. He instantly understood the intentions of the third prince, and he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. This third prince is easy to get along with. For the first time, disgust towards the third prince arose within his heart. However, he didn't say anything and instead was fearless towards those envious gazes that descended onto him. He looked at the third prince and smiled lightly. If that's the case, then I hope third prince can slightly help your sister and I. Allow me to accompany her on a stroll around the lake. How about it? The third prince's face froze. Never had he imagined that this Duan Lingtian's face was so thick that he would actually follow the flow and use it as an opportunity to gain an advantage. Just when he was at a loss for words, Su Lan's face went grim. Duan Lingtian, who do you think you are, actually daring to be so presumptuous in front of third prince? He shouted in a low voice, as if wanting to show off before the third prince and Princess Bai Yao. Duan Lingtian's brows knitted as his gaze descended upon Su Lan and he indifferently asked, "You're called Su Lan, right?" "Exactly, I'm Su Lan." Su Lan held his head high with a face full of arrogance. "Su Lan, you ask who I think I am, but I wonder who do you think you are? I'm speaking to third prince, and even third prince hasn't said anything, but you are here being presumptuous and usurping his role as host. Looks like you think nothing of the third prince." The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a slightly evil smile, his voice slowly grew louder, and as he finished, it was filled with awe-inspiring righteousness. Instantly, Su Lan was scared to the point that his face went ghastly pale. "Third prince, I didn't have that intention." Su Lan looked at third prince as he hurriedly explained. He seemed like a guilty person who had given himself away with a clumsy denial. When third prince glanced at Su Lan, his calm gaze had a sense of displeasure mixed within, but before long it recovered to his usual amiable appearance. Duan Lingtian became vigilant, as this third prince was absolutely a wolf at heart but innocent in appearance. This sort of person was a wolf in sheep's clothing and was extremely terrifying. "Brother Lingtian, I naturally have no objections to what you said," third prince slowly said. Princess Bai Yao's heartbeat abruptly increased when she heard what third prince said, and she snuck a peek at Duan Lingtian. A tiny bit of rosy red had appeared on her pretty face. Am I really going to take a stroll around the lake with him? However, Duan Lingtian's gaze on third prince had never once changed, because he discerned from third prince's gaze that he wouldn't agree so easily. As expected, third prince's gaze then descended upon the other young talents that were present. However, that would be unfair to the others that are present here. How about this? The strong are respected within the Crimson Sky Kingdom, and most of the young talents present here are at the top of the 9th level of the core formation stage. Brother Lingtian, if you can defeat them and make them be sincerely convinced, then I'm sure they wouldn't have any objections. Everyone, what do all of you think? Third prince's gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian for a moment before moving to the crowd of people. Third prince is wise. Precisely. Instantly, the young talents rubbed their palms and fists together, emitting a bearing that showed they wanted to show off in front of Princess Bai Yao and third prince. Third prince, although we are all similarly at the 9th level of the core formation stage like Duan Lingtian, he possesses a grade 7 spirit weapon. If he were to rely on the might of his spirit weapon, it would be like winning without relying on his own strength. Some astute individuals couldn't help but voice out. According to the rumors, the only reason Duan Lingtian was able to kill Duan Lingxing, who was at the same cultivation level as him, was by relying on the grade 7 spirit weapon in his possession. This point was something that was no secret within the imperial city. Noticing the third prince looking over, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a smile. Then I won't use a spirit weapon. Brother Lingtian is outright as expected. How about this? Anyone who battles Brother Lingtian is prohibited from using any form or source of external strength. The third prince laughed heartily, and a trace of a scheme succeeding flashed within his eyes. Everyone present, including him, didn't think that Duan Lingtian would be capable of suppressing all of the other 9th level core formation martial artists without using his grade 7 spirit weapon, because ordinarily speaking, martial artists at the same level of cultivation had the same amount of strength. The only difference was the stage of their martial skills. The party with the martial skill at a higher level would be the party that occupied the advantageous position. The young talents that he invited to this banquet were practically all 20 to 25-year-old genius martial artists who had cultivated their martial skills for many years. In terms of martial skills, they would absolutely be not inferior to Duan Lingtian. Third brother. Princess Bai Yao had been tolerating it for so long, but when she saw Duan Lingtian becoming the public enemy of the young talents present here due to the third prince's intentional guidance, her pretty face flushed for a moment and she couldn't help herself from voicing out. Her tolerance had reached its limit. Bai Yao, don't worry, it's only a spar. Your sweetheart will be fine. Third prince lightly smiled. The expressions of the young talents present went grim when they heard this, and their eyes filled with cold lights when they noticed Princess Bai Yao being so worried about Duan Lingtian. 164 Chapter 165, One Must Know One's Limitations. Sweetheart, Princess Bai Yao's face went red. Princess, it's just as third prince said, it's only a spar. You have nothing to worry about. Just when Princess Bai Yao was about to refute third prince, Duan Lingtian spoke before her and stopped her actions. Princess Bai Yao's peerlessly beautiful face froze and lights flowed within her water-like, clear eyes before her gaze that had a tiny bit of bewilderment gathered onto Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded to Princess Bai Yao, and his mouth opened and closed as he mouthed something to her. Don't worry. This was what the Duan Lingtian had mouthed to Princess Bai Yao. Princess Bai Yao's expression eased up slightly when she saw this, then she sat back down on her seat. She was extremely curious about where this youth that was the same age as her had obtained such strong confidence. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian was very straightforward. His body moved to descend upon an empty space in the building at the heart of the lake. Who's first? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as his gaze swept past every young talent that was present. Currently, these people were all anxious to have a try, and every one of them seemed like they wanted to step on Duan Lingtian and rise up in ranks. I'll do it. Accompanied by a light shout, a green-clothed young man descended onto the empty space to face Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused and a trace of a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth, as the person who arrived was none other than Su Lan. Third Prince. Meanwhile, Su Lan looked at Third Prince and respectfully said, like the saying goes, accidents happen. Duan Lingtian and I are both 9th level core formation martial artists, and we can only fight at full strength to decide a victor. If there were to be any casualties. If there are any casualties, then it would be something that's unavoidable. The third prince's gaze focused as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Brother Lingtian, what do you think? Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently. I agree. Princess Bai Yao's face went grim when she heard what third prince said, but just when she was about to speak, she noticed Duan Lingtian giving her another gaze that asked her to be at ease. Although she didn't speak anymore, a trace of worry appeared in her beautiful eyes. When she first laid eyes upon Duan Lingtian, although Duan Lingtian was handsome and extraordinary, she didn't have any reaction, as she had seen many handsome men. When she saw how Duan Lingtian was still able to maintain his calm and confident smile when faced with the mocking of the group of young talents, she noticed that Duan Lingtian's smile had infected her. It was as if it had plucked that string within her heart. This feeling was something she had never felt before. Now that she saw Duan Lingtian in such dangerous circumstances, she was extremely worried for Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, I'll kill you. The corners of Su Lan's mouth curled into a sneer as he looked at Duan Lingtian and his mouth opened and closed. Even though he didn't make a sound, Duan Lingtian still clearly saw what he had mouthed. Kill me. Duan Lingtian paid no attention to it. There were many people on this world that wanted to kill him, but wasn't he still alive and well now? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth held a smile, and his eyes flashed with wisdom as he indifferently said, one must know one's limitations. His words were extremely abrupt, and only Su Lan was able to understand the meaning behind his words. Su Lan's face sank as he burst into rage. You're courting death. Instantly, Su Lan's eyes went cold and his body moved. He seemed to transform into a cheetah as he charged at Duan Lingtian. Every step he took echoed out with the booming sound of his legs descending onto the ground, and it seemed as if a strong gale had blown past the area. 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above Su Lan. He exerted his full strength the moment he attacked. The movement technique Su Lan was currently executing was obviously a high-grade profound rank movement skill at the perfection stage, and his speed practically reached the limit of the 9th level of the core formation stage. Of course, this was only true if compared to ordinary 9th level core formation martial artists. Duan Lingtian wasn't included in this scope. Third Prince sat at the head and watched this scene with a smile on his face. A dense, cold light flashed deep within his eyes. Although he had only met Duan Lingtian for the first time, he felt a trace of threat within Duan Lingtian. He had a sudden premonition that the existence of Duan Lingtian would very likely become an obstacle for him to become emperor, so now he wished for nothing more than for Su Lan to kill Duan Lingtian. Princess Bai Yao clenched her fists tightly and didn't dare close her eyes, her heartbeat quickened as well. At this very moment, only the violet-clothed youth that was standing there without moving was in her eyes. Swish! Su Lan arrived before Duan Lingtian in the blink of an eye, and a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth when he noticed that Duan Lingtian hadn't made any movements. Great net palm, high-grade profound rank martial skill. Su Lan's palm opened wide and his origin energy exploded forth. The entire sky was filled with palm images that whistled as they descended to envelop Duan Lingtian. No! Seeing Su Lan's attack about to descend onto Duan Lingtian, Princess Bai Yao exclaimed and abruptly stood up. This Duan Lingtian is really conceited. The same thought appeared in the hearts of many of the young talents present, and a sneer appeared on the corners of their mouths. They all thought that Duan Lingtian would die without a doubt. A trace of a smile bloomed on Third Prince's face. Su Lan's eyes emitted a sense of madness. As far as he was concerned, once his palm strike descended, this youth that made him feel hatred and envy would completely vanish from this world. Instantly, a sense of joy appeared on the corners of his mouth. In the nick of time, Duan Lingtian's body slightly jerked as a strength close to 13 ancient mammoths exploded forth. However, there were only 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes above him. Greater teleportation. Duan Lingtian circulated his defensive martial skill and a layer of defensive chi barrier appeared on the surface of his body at the exact moment Su Lan's palm strike descended. Bang! Su Lan's palm strike descended only to land directly on Duan Lingtian's defensive chi barrier. Ah! At almost the exact same instant, Su Lan emitted a shrill cry, as his right hand that he attacked with was forcefully shoved away from the rebound force that greater teleportation sent back to him. He was blasted far away before falling into the lake with a splash. Meanwhile, the defensive chi barrier on the surface of Duan Lingtian's body shattered into pieces. Duan Lingtian's face flushed red because although he had the defensive chi barrier to protect his body, Su Lan's palm strike that utilized the strength of 12 ancient mammoths wasn't that easy to withstand, so there was still a portion of the force that descended onto his body. Luckily, the strength of his fleshly body's lifeblood far exceeded that of any ordinary martial artist. Even if he had exerted the strength of 13 ancient mammoths to form a defensive chi barrier, his internal organs would still be injured by the shock from Su Lan's palm strike. Defensive martial skills were capable of completely neutralizing similar staged offensive martial skills, but this only applied to lower-level martial artists. Once one achieved the 9th level of the core formation stage, the defensive chi barrier wasn't as effective anymore. Including Third Prince and the old man behind him, everyone present couldn't stop themselves from exclaiming, "Star Shift." They were able to discern that the defensive martial skill that Duan Lingtian executed was precisely the strongest defensive martial skill of the Shao clan, Star Shift. They were slightly dazed. How could Duan Lingtian possess Star Shift, which was a skill that the Shao clan would never pass on to someone not of their surname? Su Lan's entire arm was broken off, and his body was trembling. He stood firmly with great difficulty but was still in an extremely sorry state. In the next moment, Su Lan's pupils constricted and his face went ghastly pale. He then emitted a bitter and shrill shout. No! He saw Duan Lingtian move. The current him had absolutely no way of stopping Duan Lingtian, as his most important right arm was crippled. Spirit Serpent Movement Technique. Before anyone came back to their senses from the previous shock, Duan Lingtian instantly closed in on Su Lan. Dragon's Finishing Touch. Duan Lingtian didn't even wave his hands to create any afterimages, he directly pointed out his finger, which emitted a sharp, whistling sound as it flashed towards Su Lan's chest. Su Lan's pupils constricted as he desperately circulated his defensive martial skill. A layer of defensive chi barrier appeared on the surface of his body. Defensive chi barrier. Does it make a difference? A sneer appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth as his finger descended. It was accompanied by an awe-inspiring gale, pressing itself onto the defensive chi barrier on Su Lan's chest. It indeed faced quite a degree of resistance. However, Duan Lingtian once again exerted strength, and his finger pierced through the defensive chi barrier before directly pressing onto the place where Su Lan's heart resided. A terrifying force flowed into Su Lan's body, instantly shattering his heart. Bang! Su Lan's body trembled and his eyes opened wide before he fell limply onto the ground, completely losing any signs of life. Dead. Su Lan's body lied on the ground. At the place where his arm broke off, blood flowed out like a fountain, dazzling and resplendent. Hey, I told you. One must know one's limitations. Duan Lingtian squatted down and extended his hands to close Su Lan's eyes, which were unable to close after death, and intentionally sighed before standing up once more. He looked towards the group of young talents that had long been scared to the point that their faces were ghastly pale. Now, who's next? Duan Lingtian's frosty gaze swept these so-called young talents one by one. Instantly, the group of young men looked at each other, but there wasn't a single person who dared stand out, as they'd all witnessed Duan Lingtian's strength. Before this fight, they thought that Duan Lingtian relied on his grade 7 spirit weapon to achieve such a strength before, but now they understood that even without a spirit weapon, Duan Lingtian wasn't an existence an ordinary 9th level core formation martial artist could defeat. They were all filled with fear as they gazed upon Su Lan's corpse. They felt lucky that they didn't move out to challenge Duan Lingtian before Su Lan. Otherwise, the one that was dead would surely be one of them. Third Prince, how about it? Duan Lingtian swept the group of young talents with a disdainful gaze before moving his gaze to descend onto the third prince. Although the third prince still had a smile on his face, his smile was extremely unnatural. Never had I imagined that Brother Lingtian actually cultivated the Shao clan's star shift. However, it's up to my sister if she's willing to stroll around the lake with you. Third prince doesn't have to worry about this. Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently, then his body moved like a gust of wind to float to Princess Bai Yao's side. He extended his hand, grabbed Princess Bai Yao's tender hand, and held onto it. Princess Bai Yao's delicate figure trembled as if she were being electrified, and her cheeks blushed. It was the first time in her life that her hand was held in such a way. Princess, how about accompanying me for a stroll? Duan Lingtian nodded to Princess Bai Yao and lightly smiled. Princess Bai Yao lightly nodded with an embarrassed expression. The smile on third prince's face vanished when he saw Duan Lingtian holding Princess Bai Yao's hand and leaving in such a way. It was as if Duan Lingtian was demonstrating his dominance to him. 165 Chapter 166, Huge Profit. Third prince took a deep breath, then he glanced coldly and indifferently at the remaining young talents, and indifferently said, "Everyone, tonight's banquet will conclude now. Leave." When the group of young men noticed the suppressed fury of the third prince, they respectfully replied before turning around and leaving. Duan Lingtian released Princess Bai Yao's hand after walking out of the building at the heart of the lake and laughed apologetically. "Princess, I'm sorry for the offense." Princess Bai Yao's heart trembled. Even she didn't know why she actually felt a slight sense of loss in her heart when Duan Lingtian released her hand. "It's all right." Princess Bai Yao lightly shook her head, and her cheeks blushed. The perfect couple of youth and young woman casually strolled slowly around the man-made lake. "I apologize in my third brother's stead for today's matters. Third brother wasn't always like this, even I don't know why he would target you like that." Princess Bai Yao lightly sighed. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled at an angle, as even he didn't know why the third prince would target him in such a way. How could he have known that the third prince was prone to suspicion? When the third prince witnessed how unfathomable Duan Lingtian was and felt that he was unable to control Duan Lingtian, the third prince unconsciously considered Duan Lingtian a threat and wanted to get rid of him. Sometimes, as a member of the imperial family, it was just such a simple reason for wanting to get rid of someone, and it didn't require any real reason. Subsequently, the two of them didn't talk as they quietly strolled around the man-made lake. "Okay, Princess, it's time I take my leave." Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile to Princess Bai Yao. He had a favorable impressions of this kind-hearted young girl. "Okay." Princess Bai Yao lightly nodded before asking, "Will we meet again in the future?" "There'll be a chance." Duan Lingtian nodded before turning and leaving. Princess Bai Yao heaved a sigh of relief before faintly sighing as she watched Duan Lingtian's figure slowly disappear into the distance. "Bai Yao, you can't like him." At some point, a figure appeared beside Princess Bai Yao. Third brother, why? Princess Bai Yao looked at third prince with a pair of eyes that had a trace of unwillingness within. He isn't suitable for you. Third prince's answer was extremely simple. Not suitable. A trace of bitterness appeared on the corners of Princess Bai Yao's mouth, and she shook her head and said, in a slightly chilly voice, "Thank you, third brother, for the great hospitality. I'll be returning to the imperial palace tomorrow morning. I hope third brother can make the preparations for me." Third prince frowned, as he noticed that this sister of his probably really had feelings for that youth. "Uncle Hu, do it cleanly. I don't wish to have any remaining future troubles." Suddenly, third prince spoke as if he was talking to the air. "Yes." An old voice abruptly sounded, and at the same time, an aged figure that was concealed under the darkness of the night vanished. After leaving the third prince's estate, Duan Lingtian headed towards his own house. "I never imagined that my charms were still so great." The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a self-ridiculing smile. He naturally noticed the feelings that Princess Bai Yao's gaze emitted when she looked at him, but he didn't have any other intentions towards Princess Bai Yao. Maybe it was because of a prejudiced first impression due to Princess Bai Yao's complicated identity, or maybe it was because of the two girls at home. Let fate decide. Duan Lingtian shook his head and didn't think about it anymore. After spending half an hour, Duan Lingtian had already walked half the journey. He was currently using a shortcut and entered a deserted, small alley. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian noticed the two little pythons in his sleeve become slightly restless. Instantly, Duan Lingtian stopped his footsteps and put a vigilant expression on his face. Just at this moment, his formidable spiritual force vaguely noticed that there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at him from the shadows. "Who?" Duan Lingtian's expression couldn't help but turn grim. "Not bad, a mere 9th level core formation martial artist is able to notice my presence. Needless to say, you're extremely special." A hoarse voice sounded from the other side of the small alley, and under the moonlight, the old man appeared before Duan Lingtian. "It's you." Duan Lingtian's face went grim. The old man that presently stood before him, wasn't he that old man that was standing behind third prince tonight? "If I'm not wrong, there should be some secrets on you. Even my origin energy condensed into sound was actually unable to injure you, it's truly strange." The old man slowly walked close, and his eyes flickered brightly, emitting a strange gleam. "Third prince sent you." Duan Lingtian took a deep breath. Relying on rebirth martial emperor's experience and his spiritual force, which was comparable to a nascent soul martial artist's, he could slightly discern the old man's cultivation level. Although this old man was inferior to the divine might Marquis, Ni Yuan, he still was no easy opponent, as he was at least a 7th level nascent soul martial artist, and even might be at the 8th level of the nascent soul stage. The old man didn't answer Duan Lingtian but instead continued to walk closer slowly. "I want to know the reason." Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered with a fierce gaze, and his tone was suppressed to an extremely low tone. "The reason is, you showed off your ability too much and caused His Highness to feel threatened. Besides that, you shouldn't have been disrespectful to the princess." The old man's voice sounded like it was coming from the pits of hell, and it emitted a bone-piercing coldness. Showed off his ability too much. Shouldn't have been disrespectful to the princess. This could be a reason. Duan Lingtian's face sank. Did the third prince treat people's lives like grass? Before this, although he knew that the third prince might not be fond of him, he never expected that the third prince would want his life. A slight expression of rage appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian's icy cold gaze descended upon the old man as he said, in a cold voice, "I'll give you a chance. Retreat now, or else you will die for sure." Duan Lingtian had 2 bone corrosion inscriptions. These were powerful enough to annihilate nascent soul martial artists, but he wasn't willing to waste one here. That would cost a few million silver. Even if he were to only use one, it would still cause him a heartache for a long time, so he gave the old man a chance. If the old man wasn't sensible, then even if it caused him a heartache, for the sake of the safety of his life, he would still use the bone corrosion inscription and annihilate the old man. He could still earn more money once it was gone, but he wouldn't have anything if he lost his life. "Shameless boasting, let me see how you take my life." The old man sneered, as he obviously didn't take any heed of Duan Lingtian's word. He only thought that Duan Lingtian was intentionally mystifying himself to delay some time. Abruptly, the old man moved with a speed like a bolt of lightning, and his hand attacked like a gust of wind, seeming to transform into a giant rock that flashed towards Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian only felt an extremely formidable imposing manner sweep over, suppressing him to the point that he couldn't catch his breath and nearly suffocated. He could vaguely see 1,100 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensing into form above the old man. 8th level of the nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian's face sank. Bang! The old man slapped out his palm from a distance, and his origin energy slowly condensed as a palm seal condensed into form. Humph! Since you want to court death, then I'll grant your wish. Duan Lingtian grunted coldly. His hand flashed over his waist, then his violet myrtle flexible sword whistled out. At the instant the old man's palm seal condensed fully into form, Duan Lingtian activated the bone corrosion inscription on his violet myrtle flexible sword as well. Instantly, a strand of a gray-colored flowing light jumped about atop the blade of the violet myrtle flexible sword, and the flowing light was as swift as a bolt of lightning when it flashed out. No! The old man's pupils constricted, and at the instant he reacted, the gray-colored flowing light had pierced into his body. Instantly, ah! The old man's shrill and sad cry sounded, and even Duan Lingtian couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine as he heard it. This bone corrosion inscription was really too overbearing. In the next moment, the old man's shrill cries stopped dead in their tracks. His body trembled and the origin energy within his entire body dissipated. Not only that, the old man's body seemed to abruptly turn into a pile of mud and instantly collapsed. The bones inside his body were completely corroded and had transformed into nothingness. Even Duan Lingtian, who had killed many people, still felt nauseous at this moment. It was the first time he had seen such a method of death. A death comparable to the bones of the entire body turning into ashes, and only the flesh and skin remained. Swoosh! Duan Lingtian was unwilling to take another glance, so he directly lit up some pill fire and burned the old man's corpse that was too horrible to look at to ashes. In the end, Duan Lingtian found the old man's spatial ring from within the pile of ashes, and only then did he leave. On the way, Duan Lingtian claimed ownership over the spatial ring. FK. When Duan Lingtian saw the contents of the spatial ring, his face flushed red, and he couldn't stop himself from swearing. Within the spatial ring was a pile of neatly arranged silver, and most of them were silver bills of the 10,000 denomination. Duan Lingtian roughly counted for a moment and came to the conclusion that the pile of silver within the spatial ring had a combined sum of at least 70 or 80 million. He couldn't have been the manager of the third prince's estate, right? Duan Lingtian's heart was filled with wild joy as he guessed. Third prince, you've sent such a generous gift to me this time. Duan Lingtian's face was suffused with a smile. Luckily, this old fellow wasn't scared off by me, otherwise, I would have brushed by this 70 or 80 million silver. As he recalled what happened earlier, Duan Lingtian had a slight lingering fear in his heart. It could be imagined that if the old man knew of Duan Lingtian's current thoughts, he wouldn't be able to rest in peace even on the road to hell. A bone corrosion inscription would at most be worth over 3 million silver. Today's deal was truly a huge profit. Duan Lingtian beamed on the way home. Over 3 million silver in exchange for 70 or 80 million silver, the profit was so considerable that it would be nearly impossible to come by again. That Duan Rule manages many businesses under the Duan clan, so he probably has a shocking sum of wealth in his possession. If he isn't sensible and comes looking for trouble with me, then don't blame me for being ruthless. A sneer appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth, and a trace of greed arose within his eyes. Today's matter had undoubtedly allowed him to have a taste of the benefits. That fifth prince as well, his estate manager will certainly have quite a sum of money, right? As he muttered to himself, Duan Lingtian noticed that he had arrived at his house gate. Because he had notified them beforehand, the three beauties in his house weren't that worried about Duan Lingtian. However, after Duan Lingtian returned, the two girls still gathered together with faces full of curious expressions and asked him about what happened during tonight's banquet. Duan Lingtian naturally wouldn't tell them the truth, otherwise, they would start worrying again. Moreover, if he were to mention Princess Bai Yao, little Fei would surely start getting jealous again. 166 Chapter 167, Third Prince's Probing. Deep into the night, Duan Lingtian summoned Shang Quan over and passed a pile of silver to him. Take this 50 million silver and buy as much of those materials I asked you to buy the other time as you can, Duan Lingtian ordered. 50 million silver? Shang Quan was stunned. Where did the young master get so much money from? However, he was a smart man, so he didn't ask. He respectfully put the silver away and said, "Yes, young master." When Duan Lingtian returned to his room, he used up the last portion of materials Shang Quan had purchased last time and once again inscribed a bone corrosion inscription atop his violet myrtle flexible sword. It could be said that he had experienced the might of the bone corrosion inscription today. Even the old man beside the third prince, an existence at the 8th level of the nascent soul stage, didn't even have the time to react before he was hit. And the bones in his entire body turned to ashes, he was completely and utterly dead. The bone corrosion inscription was a life-saving talisman to Duan Lingtian. He could imagine how he would have been killed by that old man if he didn't have the bone corrosion inscription. Third prince, I, Duan Lingtian, will remember the gift you gave me today. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a cold light. After easing himself up, Duan Lingtian cultivated the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Techniques Raging Python form until deep into the night before going to sleep. At morning the next day, Duan Lingtian attended classes in the Star Mastermind Department's classroom as usual. During the class, someone came to see Sima Chongfeng, and after going out for a while, Sima Chongfeng returned. He looked at Duan Lingtian with a strange expression. "Duan Lingtian, come out with me for a moment." Although Duan Lingtian thought it was weird, he still followed Sima Chongfeng out. "Teacher, did you call me out here for something?" Duan Lingtian questioned. "Someone wants to see you," Sima Chongfeng said. Just when Duan Lingtian was wondering who wanted to see him, Sima Chongfeng had already brought him to an empty area at the corner of Paladin Academy, and there was a luxurious carriage stopped there. 2 old men were standing at each side of the carriage. Relying on the experiences of rebirth Martial Emperor and his own formidable spiritual force, Duan Lingtian could determine that the strength of these 2 old men were not one bit inferior to the old man he killed with the bone corrosion inscription last night. "Go ahead," Sima Chongfeng nodded to Duan Lingtian. "I'll wait for you here." Duan Lingtian curiously walked over, and he was stunned once he entered the carriage. The person who sat within the carriage was none other than the third prince, who he'd just seen yesterday. However, after a night's time, the third prince didn't have a face full of smiles like yesterday, he now had a gloomy expression. "Third prince, are you looking for me?" Duan Lingtian wasn't courteous at all. He directly sat down within the carriage, and his brows knitted. "Duan Lingtian, as honest people are straightforward and don't beat around the bush. Last night, Uncle Hu didn't return after he left. Was he killed by your people?" The third prince looked at Duan Lingtian with an electric gaze. He stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian, watching for any change on Duan Lingtian's face as if he was extremely afraid of missing the slightest twitch. Duan Lingtian had a face full of surprise and bewilderment when he heard what the third prince said. "Third prince, who's Uncle Hu?" Third prince frowned. He had been observing the changes in Duan Lingtian's expression the whole time, but he noticed that there was nothing amiss in Duan Lingtian's expression when he mentioned the matter of Uncle Hu. Could it be that it really had nothing to do with Duan Lingtian? But that's impossible. Yesterday, he sent Uncle Hu to kill Duan Lingtian. However, Uncle Hu never returned. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. If it was just Uncle Hu who disappeared, it would only be the loss of an 8th-level nascent soul martial artist, and it would only cause him a short period of heartache. But Uncle Hu had another identity. He was the manager of his estate, and thus controlled his private wealth. The thing he was urgently seeking now was precisely the spatial ring on Uncle Hu's hand. If that spatial ring was gone, then it would also mean that his 70 or 80 million silver had gone down the drain, and his future days would become difficult. Even though he was a prince, the expenses of his own estate were paid out of his own pocket. Moreover, if he wanted to get more support to obtain the seat of emperor in the future, he would require usage of that wealth to obtain connections and bribe officials. Duan Lingtian had a surprised expression when he curiously asked, "Third prince, why's your expression so unsightly? Has something happened?" Duan Lingtian, "It doesn't matter if you've killed Uncle Hu. I can disregard it, but you must hand over Uncle Hu's spatial ring, or else, you should know the consequences." The third prince's expression went gloomy as he finished speaking. He still wanted to gamble and probe if that spatial ring was in Duan Lingtian's hands or not. "Third prince, what's the meaning of this? Someone from your estate died and you blame it on me." Duan Lingtian's face sank and he burst into a rage. "As for whatever spatial ring you speak of, I know nothing of it. Farewell." Duan Lingtian didn't look back and walked out of the carriage. He left as soon as he finished speaking. The third prince's expression was incomparably unsightly. It really wasn't him. Then who the heck was it? Uncle Hu was his trusted follower, and he was confident that if it wasn't for something happening to Uncle Hu, he would absolutely not vanish on him. Once I find out who did it, not matter who it is, I'll bury him in a shallow grave. The third prince, who usually seemed easily approachable, now had a savage expression on his face. It was as if he had transformed into a devil. Before long, the third prince's luxurious carriage left under the gazes of Duan Lingtian and Sima Chongfeng. Duan Lingtian, what did third prince look for you for? Sima Chongfeng asked curiously. I don't know either, he just told me that his estate's uncle who died, and something about a spatial ring, baffling. Duan Lingtian shrugged with an innocent expression. It wasn't unexpected to him that the third prince would look for him, but he never expected that the third prince would come so fast. It looked like that silver was a huge amount even for the third prince, even to the extent it had an extraordinary meaning. Uncle Hu, spatial ring, Sima Chongfeng was dazed for a moment before deducing the possibilities. According to my knowledge, the manager of the third prince's estate is called Husan. Could it be that Husan is dead? Husan is the individual that the third prince trusts the most, and he even controls the wealth of the third prince's estate. Could it be that Husan's dead, and the spatial ring that contained the wealth of the third prince's estate vanished with him? Duan Lingtian's eyes were wide open, he intentionally acted surprised as he spoke. That's probably it. Keep this matter to yourself, under no circumstances should you spread it. Otherwise, it would provoke unnecessary troubles. That third prince isn't someone to be trifled with lightly. Sima Chongfeng had a serious expression as he warned Duan Lingtian. Understood, teacher. Duan Lingtian hurriedly nodded, as a bright light flashed within his eyes. The third prince was naturally not someone who should be trifled with lightly, this was something he experiences during the banquet last night. In fact, at the moment he saw the third prince today, he guessed the reason the third prince had come. He had taken notice of the burning gaze the third prince shot at him when he abruptly mentioned that the death of Husan was connected to him. He naturally was able to guess the third prince's goal. It was nothing more than trying to probe him and see if he was really connected to the disappearance of Husan. But unfortunately, the third prince was making a futile effort in trying to make him slip up. As a weapons specialist in his previous life, how could he possibly fall for such a poor attempt? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but laugh to himself when he recalled what the third prince said in the end. The third prince actually wanted him to spit out what he had already ate. Was that possible? Duan Lingtian followed Sima Chongfeng back to the classroom and continued to attend the class. At noon, after class ended, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan walked over. Duan Lingtian, what did teacher Sima call you out for? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Nothing. He just told me that a war might break out at the northwest border at any time, and asked me if I'm interested in going if the Paladin Academy's Star Mastermind department wants to send students over. Duan Lingtian spoke of the things which Sima Chongfeng told him 10 days ago, using it as an excuse. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan, however, believed it to be true, and Xiao Xuan sighed. Logically speaking, if Paladin Academy really needs to send students, it would usually be grade 3 and above students that would have the opportunity to head over. Teacher Sima asking you this undoubtedly means that he plans to put his all in recommending you to go. Maybe. Duan Lingtian nodded. Xiao Yu thought about yesterday's matter and jokingly asked, Duan Lingtian, did you gain anything from attending the third prince's banquet yesterday? That third prince probably spent a great deal of effort in trying to rope you into his side, right? Spent great efforts to rope me in. Duan Lingtian's expression was slightly unnatural. That third prince wished for nothing more than his death, why would he still rope him in? However, he naturally wouldn't say it and he lightly smiled. The biggest gain from yesterday was probably meeting the #1 beauty of the Imperial City. The Imperial City's #1 beauty? Xiao Yu's and Xiao Xuan's gazes shone. You met Princess Bai Yao. Duan Lingtian nodded. If I knew earlier, I would have followed you and joined in on the fun. Xiao Yu had a regretful expression. You really want to go join in the fun? Looks like when I see little Qian again, I'll have to tell her about this. An evil smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. The little Qian he mentioned was precisely Luo Cheng's sister, Luo Qian. Xiao Yu rolled his eyes at Duan Lingtian before asking curiously, how was it? Was that Princess Bai Yao beautiful? Duan Lingtian nodded. She's worthy of her reputation. In terms of looks, she isn't inferior to your sister. Xiao Yu was slightly moved. The looks of his sister, Xiao Lan, was something he was aware of, and she was absolutely an unsurpassed beauty. What, Xiao Yu, your sister is actually a beauty that can be compared to Princess Bai Yao. Xiao Xuan's eyes shone as if he had transformed into a hungry wolf. Xiao Xuan, don't have any ideas about my sister. She already has someone in her heart. Xiao Yu shook his head and smiled. That isn't a problem, I'll surely prove to her that I'm 10 times, 100 times stronger than the person in her heart. As far as Xiao Xuan was concerned, the person Xiao Yu's sister had taken a fancy to was probably someone from Aurora City. In terms of natural talent, strength, and background, the other person had no way of comparing to him. As a direct descendant of the Imperial City's Xiao clan, Xiao Xuan was extremely confident in this aspect. Are you sure you're 10 times, 100 times stronger than that person? Xiao Yu's gaze became slightly strange. What, besides Duan Lingtian and you, there's another freak from Aurora City? Xiao Xuan's heart jerked as he asked curiously. Xiao Yu shook his head. Then you mean, Xiao Xuan hadn't finished speaking when he noticed Xiao Yu neither intentionally nor unintentionally glancing at Duan Lingtian. 167 Chapter 168, Su Tong. Xiao Xuan jolted, and a bitter smile unconsciously appeared on the corners of his mouth when he reacted. It couldn't be, right? The person Xiao Yu's sister had taken a fancy to was Duan Lingtian. If it was someone else, he might have the confidence to compete, but if it was Duan Lingtian, he knew his limitations. He was miles away from Duan Lingtian, and to compare himself to Duan Lingtian would be akin to bringing unhappiness onto himself. What are you two looking at me for? Duan Lingtian was still pondering about the matter with the third prince, and when he came back to his senses, he noticed Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan both staring at him. Is there something on my face? Duan Lingtian had obviously not heard the conversation between Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan earlier. No, Xiao Xuan shook his head with a smile. Let's go get some food. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 arrived at the cafeteria and waited for some time. Even after their food had arrived, Su Li and Tian Hu were still nowhere to be found. Why are they so late today? Xiao Xuan had a bewildered expression. He thought this was strange. Something couldn't have happened, right? Duan Lingtian's brows lightly frowned, as Su Li and Tian Hu had always been on time and had never once been so late before. He felt like something wasn't right, and his heart rose to his throat. Duan Lingtian. Just at this moment, a slightly anxious and alarmed cry sounded from outside the cafeteria, and it slowly moved closer. It's Tian Hu. Why is it only him? Duan Lingtian recognized the person in the distance with just a glance, and his brows knitted before flashing out to greet him. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian arrived before Tian Hu and noticed that Tian Hu's expression was extremely unsightly. His heart jerked, as he felt a bad premonition arise within it, and he hurriedly asked, Tian Hu, where's Su Li? Meanwhile, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan had caught up. Su Li. A bitter and helpless smile appeared on the corners of Tian Hu's mouth when he heard Duan Lingtian's questions. He's been surrounded by those Su clan members. Su clan members. Could it be that Su Li was related to the Imperial City's Su clan? Duan Lingtian's face sank as if he was being covered by a layer of ice. Let's go. While Duan Lingtian's group of 3 were led by Tian Hu through the road towards the bamboo forest behind Paladin Academy. Within the quiet forest, Su Li lied there in an extremely listless state. He had obviously been injured quite heavily. Now it was difficult for him to even stand, but even then, Su Li's gaze still contained a trace of coldness, and he had never once loosened his grip on the 3-foot-long blade in his hand. Su Li's heart was firm as a rock, and even if he were to be humiliated, he would still be firm and unyielding. Before Su Li stood 3 young men. The young man in the lead was wearing embroidered clothes and was around the age of 25. His foot was currently on Su Li's sword hand, and a sneer appeared on his face. What, it's already come to this and you're still unwilling to let go of your sword? Su Li, you're trash just like your father. It would be fine if you had obediently stayed in the countryside, but you had to return to the Imperial City and even appear before me. Aren't you courting death? What, still glaring at me? Have you not resigned to your fate? The young man in embroidered clothes got angry when he noticed Su Li's cold gaze, and he raised his foot to kick Su Li's face. Instantly, fresh blood burst out from Su Li's face. It looked like a brilliant rose that was dazzling to the eye. Su Tong, 10 years. I'll surely kill you within 10 years. The corners of Su Li's mouth flashed with a trace of coldness, and his frosty voice emitted a coldness that seemed like it came from the depths of hell. But Su Li's voice was mixed with infinite confidence. 10 years. The young man in embroidered clothes was dazed for a moment before he started laughing and an evil smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Su Li, do you think you can defeat me 10 years from now? Although I'm not afraid of you, you've really reminded me. I'm indeed unable to kill you inside Paladin Academy. However, I'm really curious. If I were to cripple your Dantian, then 10 years from now, how would you kill me? What would you rely on to kill me? Now I'll destroy all of your hopes. After he finished speaking, the young man in embroidered clothes seemed to become more amused the more he thought of it, and he was just about to raise his leg and give Su Li's Dantian that last strike. Su Li's pupils constricted, and a strand of despair could be vaguely noticed from within his eyes. If his Dantian really were to be crippled, then it would also mean that his entire life would be ruined. No, Su Li's heart was filled with unwillingness. Su Li's breathing became hurried when he saw the young man in embroidered clothes raise his legs. He wanted to struggle, but he noticed that his body was powerless and he had no way of dodging. Just at this moment, Clan Brother, that companion of Su Li's, is back, and he brought 3 people with him. 2 of them seemed to be the Duan Lingtian and the Xiao clan's Xiao Xuan. One of the young men behind Su Tong noticed the 4 figures flying over. Duan Lingtian, Xiao Xuan. The corners of Su Tong's mouth curled into a sneer, and his gaze descended far off into the distance at the 4 people who approached aggressively as he muttered to himself, he came in the end. Su Li, Tian, who had only just arrived when he noticed Su Li's miserable condition, and his face went grim as he pounced over. Whoosh! Just at this moment, one of the young men behind Su Tong moved out. He kicked with a speed like a bolt of lightning and sent Tian Hu flying. 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes were indistinctly visible above the young man. 9th level of the core formation stage. Bang! Tian Hu fiercely crashed on the floor and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was ghastly pale. Tian Hu, Xiao Yu's face went grim and his eyes were filled with rage. Su Tong, it's you. Xiao Xuan's gaze, however, descended onto the young man wearing embroidered clothes in the lead, and his face sank. Xiao Xuan, don't dabble in these muddy waters. Scram! Su Tong's cold and indifferent voice sounded, and his gaze then descended upon the violet-clothed youth beside Xiao Xuan. You can leave today, but this Duan Lingtian must stay. When he noticed Su Li's miserable state, Duan Lingtian's expression became extremely unsightly. Su Li was his friend. When he saw Tian Hu being kicked, a malicious flame burnt into being within him, and just when he felt it slightly difficult to suppress the rage within his heart, he heard the abrupt words of the young man in the lead. You want me to stay? Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered, and he focused his gaze on the embroidered-clothed young man, Su Tong. Could it be that this Su Tong's target wasn't Su Li, but him? Instantly, a cold feeling arose within his heart. Duan Lingtian, go! Just at this moment, Su Li's frosty voice echoed out. He had obviously guessed something and thus asked Duan Lingtian to leave. Duan Lingtian took a step forward, looked at Su Tong with an icy cold gaze, and spoke in a low voice. You did this to Su Li just to get me over here. He didn't listen to Su Li. If he were to leave now, then he wouldn't be Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, needless to say, you're extremely intelligent. However, intelligent people usually don't live long. Su Tong glanced at Duan Lingtian with a slightly astonished expression. A smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he spoke with a terrifyingly calm voice. Since you can guess my purpose, then you can probably guess why I'm here, right? What? The Su clan members can't lose a fight? Duan Lingtian sneered. He did indeed guess it. If he had any involvement with the Su clan, then it would undoubtedly be the matter that occurred during the third prince's banquet last night. The Su Lan that died by his hand was precisely a Su Lan member. Can't lose a fight. Su Tong's face sank. Last night you used despicable methods to sneak attack Su Lan and killed him. You think you have the qualifications to say that the Su clan can't lose a fight? Despicable methods. Sneak attack. Duan Lingtian's eyes went cold. Third prince, you're really atrocious. Duan Lingtian could guess that all of this was surely something the third prince had orchestrated. At the side, Xiao Xuan's heart jerked. Su Lan. Duan Lingtian killed Su Lan. That disciple from the Su clan's branch clan with the highest natural talent, Su Lan. Su Tong's cousin. So what do you want? Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as he looked at Su Tong with a burning gaze. His voice was extremely calm. Attacking so maliciously at such a young age. If it was up to me, your cultivation wouldn't be present in this world. Su Tong's gaze focused as he sneered. So in other words, you plan to cripple my cultivation. Duan Lingtian started laughing out of anger. He laughed with a wide grin on his face, and a shocking luster moved about within his eyes. Xiao Xuan and Xiao Yu's face went gloomy. Su Tong, Xiao Xuan said coldly, you better not forget that he's the son of Duan Rufeng, a direct descendant of the Duan clan. If you dare cripple his cultivation, how would you give the Duan clan an explanation? The Duan clan. Su Tong started laughing and looked at Xiao Xuan as if he were looking at an idiot. Xiao Xuan, don't tell me you don't know that Duan Lingtian refused the Duan clan. Now Duan Lingtian isn't a Duan clan member. So you don't have to bring this out to scare me. Su Tong was a distinguished direct descendant of the Su clan who will have the opportunity to compete for the position of patriarch in the future. His status within the Su clan was a decisive one. Thus, as far as he was concerned, as long as Duan Lingtian hadn't returned to the Duan clan, not to mention crippling Duan Lingtian's cultivation, even if he were to kill Duan Lingtian, it wouldn't be a problem. Xiao Xuan's face sank, as he had no means to refute. Even though he was a direct descendant of the Xiao clan, only ordinary people would be afraid of this identity. Su Tong wasn't afraid. Su Tong, the grandson of the Su clan's grand elder, was at the third level of the origin core stage at the age of 25. He was the individual with the highest natural talent in the Su clan's younger generation and was one of the candidates for the next Su clan patriarch. It could be said that Su Tong was born with a golden spoon in his mouth and had accumulated a myriad of favor for himself. Xiao Xuan, if you're sensible, then hurry up and scram. If you don't, even if you're a direct descendant of the Xiao clan, I'll still make you bleed today. Su Tong's gaze went cold, and he spoke as if he feared nothing and in an extremely overbearing manner. Duan Lingtian is my friend. Xiao Xuan's face sank, and he looked fearlessly at Su Tong. Good, very good, truly touching friendship. Su Tong started laughing without restraint, laughing arrogantly and in an unruly manner. In the next moment, whoosh, Su Tong's body moved, his speed rose to the limit as he flashed before Xiao Xuan in the blink of an eye. Bang, instantly, Xiao Xuan's body was blasted away by Su Tong before fiercely dropping onto the ground. Above Su Tong, 40 ancient mammoth silhouettes flashed before disappearing instantly. Third level of the origin core stage. Duan Lingtian expression became even gloomier, and his frosty gaze descended upon Su Tong, seeming to be able to swallow him alive. 168 Chapter 169, Cripple the Dantian. Su Tong. Duan Lingtian's expression was gloomy as he spoke in a low voice that was mixed with a breathtaking icy coldness from the depths of hell. Su Li, Tianhu, and Xiao Xuan were injured one after the other. The rage within his heart had accumulated to the brink of explosion. Su Tong withdrew his cold and fierce gaze from Xiao Xuan and moved it onto Duan Lingtian. A strand of mischief jumped about within his gaze. What? Angry already? Can't take it anymore. As he spoke up to this point, Su Tong's tone changed and brought coldness with it. Then when you used despicable means to sneak attack my cousin, Su Lan, and killed him, did you ever think of his parents' feelings? Today, I won't kill you, I'll only cripple your cultivation. In the future, if you appear before me again, I'll surely kill you. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth slightly trembled, then a cold smile appeared on it. You want to cripple my cultivation? Then it will depend on if you have the capability or not. Presently, Duan Lingtian's reason had completely been suppressed by his rage. He took a step forward with an imposing manner that shot through the sky. As for the matter with Su Lan, he didn't care to explain. Grab him, Su Tong abruptly ordered. Whoosh, whoosh. Instantly, the two young men behind Su Tong flew out and rushed towards Duan Lingtian. These two people were both 9th level core formation martial artists. They pounced at Duan Lingtian in full fury and approached from both sides. They extended their hands with the intention of grabbing onto Duan Lingtian's shoulder and causing Duan Lingtian to be unable to move. You're courting death. Faced with the two people who flashed towards him, Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold and his hand descended onto the violet myrtle flexible sword on his waist, then he took a step forward and moved to intercept the two people. Suddenly, sword drawing arts, Duan Lingtian made his move. 15 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above him. A dazzling, violet sword light seemed to have eyes as it moved like a shadow and flashed past the sky with peerless sharpness. At the same time, accompanied by 2 dazzling and resplendent red roses that bloomed in the air, 2 shrill cries echoed in tow. Bang, bang, 2 severed arms from 2 different people crashed onto the floor. The 2 young men who approached in full fury just a moment ago now had ghastly pale expressions. They retreated to a side after stopping the blood at the spot their arms were severed, and they looked at Duan Lingtian with dreadful gazes. Never had they imagined that Duan Lingtian would still resist even when it had come to this. Cold sweat dripped out of their foreheads and sadness appeared within their eyes as they gazed at the 2 arms beneath Duan Lingtian's feet. If Duan Lingtian knew of the thoughts of these 2 people, he would surely laugh in disdain. Not resist, waiting for death. Even Su Tong didn't expect Duan Lingtian to actually dare to sever the arms of those 2 Su clan disciples, and for a moment his eyes glared widely, then his body started trembling in extreme fury. On Su Tong's body, origin energy ravaged, and 40 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above him. Duan Lingtian, I originally thought that you were an intelligent person, but I didn't think you were actually so stupid. It's already come to this and you actually dare to resist. Su Tong's cold voice seemed to sound from the mouth of an asura, and mixed within was towering killing intent. You want to cripple my cultivation and you don't even let me resist. Duan Lingtian sneered. This Su Tong was really laughable. He wanted to cripple Duan Lingtian's cultivation but didn't allow him to resist. Could it be that he wanted Duan Lingtian to stand on the spot and wait to be killed? Would there be any difference in the outcome whether you resist or not? Su Tong continued as he walked step by step towards Duan Lingtian. He spoke with an extremely low voice. However, you daring to resist has completely enraged me, and I've now changed my mind. I can't kill you inside Paladin Academy, so I'll cripple your cultivation. When you leave Paladin Academy, you will lose your life. Duan Lingtian didn't have a shred of fear as he watched Su Tong walk over, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. Then it depends on if you have the capability. What? Do you think that with your 9th level core formation stage cultivation and the grade 7 spirit weapon in your hand, you'll be able to go against the will of a 3rd level origin core martial artist? Su Tong's voice was filled with disdain. Even if you used your grade 7 spirit weapon, you would at most be able to exert the strength of 15 ancient mammoths. I, however, am at the 3rd level of the origin core stage, so even if I don't use a spirit weapon, I still have sufficient strength to exert the strength of 40 ancient mammoths. In front of me, your puny strength is like an ant. Su Tong said this word for word. It was as if he wanted to completely annihilate Duan Lingtian's last shred of confidence. Hey, looks like you're extremely confident of your strength. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a nice angle as his sword-shaped brows raised and his eyes flashed with a strange light. You're still stubborn even at a time like this. Needless to say, your courage is really shocking. Meanwhile, Su Tong had already arrived nearby Duan Lingtian, and his face was covered in a layer of ice. However, it's useless to rely solely on courage sometimes. You'll soon know how laughable your little courage is before formidable strength. I'm waiting to see. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with streams of light as he looked at Su Tong with a calm gaze. Ignorant. An evil flame rose to life within Su Tong when he saw Duan Lingtian still maintain his composure, and his eyes were suffused with killing intent. Whoosh! Su Tong took a step forward. A gust of wind howled out, blowing the dust on the ground to fill the air. Duan Lingtian, I want to see whether you'll still be carefree like this when your dantian is crippled and you've become a cripple. Su Tong's voice became even more icy cold, and his fierce gaze seemed to be able to see through Duan Lingtian. I'm curious as well, when you've become a cripple and recall this scene, will you feel that everything is just so laughable? Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a cold light as he rebuked. He was unwilling to show weakness. You're courting death. Su Tong's rage had reached an extent that was difficult to suppress, and his body flashed out as if transforming into a gust of wind as he blew towards Duan Lingtian. In the air, 40 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out in tow. Duan Lingtian, Xiao Yu had just given Su Li, Tian Hu, and Xiao Xuan gold injury pills when he saw this scene. His face went pale and he was furious to the point that his eyes seemed like they were splitting. At this moment, he only hated himself for being too weak and unable to help Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian stood on the spot. His cold gaze focused onto Su Tong, who flashed directly towards him, and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. You want to cripple my dantian? Then I'll let you try the feeling of having your dantian crippled. Bang! Meanwhile, Su Tong had already arrived nearby Duan Ling Tian. He slammed out his fist that raged with origin energy, then the origin energy condensed together and slammed towards Duan Ling Tian's dantian. He obviously wanted to directly shatter Duan Ling Tian's dantian. Su Tong's face emitted a cold smile. It was as if he had already seen the scene of Duan Ling Tian's dantian being shattered. Whoosh! At almost the exact same time, Duan Ling Tian moved, and the violet myrtle flexible sword in his hand lightly trembled. A trace of disdain appeared on the corners of Su Tong's mouth when he saw this. A mere 9th level core formation martial artist, even if Duan Ling Tian had a grade 7 spirit weapon, he would still disregard Duan Ling Tian. However, the disdain on the corners of his mouth completely froze before long, and his eyes opened wide as if he had seen something terrifying. A bloody light flashed out of the blade of the violet myrtle flexible sword in Duan Ling Tian's hand and condensed into a blood crescent. The blood crescent was fast like a bolt of lightning as it moved to intercept Su Tong's fist strike that was condensed with origin energy. It was precisely the blood crescent inscription on the violet myrtle flexible sword. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian's eyes were filled with coldness. No! Accompanied by a sad and bitter cry, Su Tong's fist was pierced through by the blood crescent, bringing about a trace of dazzling fresh blood that formed a red rose in the air. The blood crescent's momentum didn't slow down and moved directly towards Su Tong's dantian. Poochie! It easily entered Su Tong's body and shattered his dantian. Ah! Su Tong's body trembled and he abruptly shouted. The feeling of the origin energy in his dantian dissipating nearly caused him to forget the pain that was coming from his fist. Putong! Su Tong's legs went soft as he directly kneeled before Duan Ling Tian. No! Su Tong's eyes were open wide. He was dazed for a moment, and he continuously shook his head. He was slightly out of his wits, as he was unwilling to believe that all of this was real. You actually crippled my dantian. Su Tong looked at Duan Ling Tian with a pair of eyes that flickered with the luster of hatred. He never would have imagined that this Duan Ling Tian would possess such a terrifying offensive inscription that could not only break through his attack, but even pierce through his dantian. It caused the origin energy within his entire body to dissipate and make him into a complete and utter cripple. Duan Ling Tian had a calm expression when he saw this, and a light flashed within his eyes. Didn't you say that you wanted to cripple my dantian? Now, how do you feel? How's the feeling of becoming a cripple? Today, if it wasn't for him possessing a blood crescent inscription, Su Tong's fate would actually be his. This Su Tong was so cruel and merciless, wanting to cripple his dantian at every turn. So he gave him a taste of his own medicine. Su Tong's face flushed red. He got so angry from what Duan Ling Tian said that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Within his head, Duan Ling Tian's words from before reverberated. I'm curious as well. When you've become a cripple and recall this scene, will you feel that everything is just so laughable? So it turned out that this Duan Ling Tian had planned everything and was just waiting for him to charge over to use an offensive inscription to destroy his dantian. Yeah, now that he recalled it, it was indeed laughable. The Su clan won't let you off. Su Tong's body trembled from his agitated state of mind, and he fainted from the loss of blood. Clan brother. The expressions of the two Su clan disciples whose arms were severed by Duan Ling Tian went ghastly pale, and a trace of dread appeared within their eyes. They had never imagined that this Duan Ling Tian was so terrifying. Not only was his natural talent in the martial Dao heaven-defying, he even possessed offensive inscriptions that were sufficient to deal with origin core martial artists. Even within the entire domain of the Crimson Sky Kingdom, such an inscription was still extremely precious. In the distance, Su Li, Tian Hu, and Xiao Xuan's injuries had only just slightly recovered, and they stood up with great difficulty with the support of Xiao Yu. However, when they saw what happened in the distance, they were completely dumbstruck. When Duan Ling Tian faced the third-level origin core Su Tong, they were practically in despair and felt that Duan Ling Tian's cultivation would surely be crippled by Su Tong. But the end result exceeded their expectations. 169 Chapter 170, Su Clan. They never would have imagined that Su Tong, who wanted to cripple Duan Ling Tian, would instead be crippled by Duan Ling Tian. What a mockery this was. However, now that they saw that Duan Ling Tian was safe and sound, they all heaved breaths of relief. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian frowned and looked outside the bamboo forest. Presently, 3 extremely swift figures were flying over from afar. They arrived nearby in the blink of an eye. These were 3 middle-aged men, and Duan Lingtian only recognized one of them. Niu Mang, the grade 1 teacher of the Star General Department who was also the teacher for Su Li's and Tianhu's class. As for the other 2 middle-aged men, one was a thickly built brawny man, and the other was a middle-aged scholar with graceful bearings. Just from their outer appearances, Duan Lingtian was able to guess which department's teachers they were. Su Tong. When the thickly built brawny man recognized Su Tong, who had fallen on the floor, his face became slightly grim. Without any hesitation, he walked swiftly over and helped Su Tong stop the fresh blood that was unceasingly pouring out from within him, and at the same time he gave Su Tong a gold injury pill. What's going on? The brawny man's thick eyebrows frowned. His tiger eyes gave of an imposing demeanor as his gaze focused onto Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian wasn't the least bit afraid when he met the brawny man's gaze, and he shrugged. It's actually nothing much, it's just that he wanted to cripple my cultivation, but in the end he wasn't successful. Just like that. The brawny man inspected Su Tong after he heard what Duan Lingtian said, and only now did he notice that Su Tong's dantian had actually been crippled. Instantly, his pupils couldn't help but constrict as he looked at the violet-clothed youth before him with a shocked expression. The casual expression on the youth's face struck terror in his heart. Kid, do you know what trouble you've gotten into? Teacher, according to my knowledge, the rules of Paladin Academy only disallows killing amongst student. Someone wanted to cripple my dantian, so I couldn't have restrained myself, done nothing, and waited for death, right? Duan Lingtian waved his hand as he laughed indifferently with a carefree expression. He didn't feel like he was in the wrong in today's matter. If it wasn't for Su Tong being overbearing and even viciously wanting to cripple his dantian, he wouldn't have been so ruthless. As far as he was concerned, Su Tong had absolutely brought this upon himself. The corners of the brawny man's mouth twitched when he saw Duan Lingtian's expression that was filled with innocence as if he was harmless. Are you Duan Lingtian? Just at this moment, the gaze of the middle-aged scholar who came with the brawny man descended onto Duan Lingtian. Teacher. Duan Lingtian greeted the middle-aged scholar. The brawny man's gaze was slightly surprised. So you're Duan Lingtian. If today's matter is really as you said, then the academy will not blame you. However, it won't be so easy to talk it over with the Su clan. This Su Tong has an extremely high status within the Su clan, so you have to be mentally prepared. Thank you for the reminder, teacher. Duan Lingtian lightly nodded before expressing his gratitude. The brawny man glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian before looking at the 2 young men with severed arms. You 2 seem to be members of the Su clan, right? You 2 take Su Tong back. Besides that, take your severed arms with you, they should still be barely reattachable. Yes, teacher. The 2 young men with severed arms had bitter expressions as they grabbed their own severed arms before carrying Su Tong and leaving in dejection. Meanwhile, Niu Mang, who had heard the full story from Su Li and Tianhu, walked over. I heard about what happened from my 2 students. The origin of the matter was that Su Tong, and Duan Lingtian was only defending himself, so it has nothing to do with Duan Lingtian. The brawny man and middle-aged scholar both nodded when they heard this. Even though it's like this, we still have to report this matter to the vice dean. Indeed. The brawny man and middle-aged scholar glanced at Duan Lingtian before turning around and leaving. The 2 of them arrived swiftly and left swiftly. One might say they came and went like the wind. Teacher, I'll feel slightly nervous if you keep looking at me like that. Duan Lingtian noticed that Niu Mang was staring intently at him, causing a chill to run through him. This Niu Mang wouldn't have that sort of hobby, right? Niu Mang seemed to have realized the inappropriateness of his gaze. He laughed slyly and rubbed his fists together. Duan Lingtian, your natural talent in the martial Dao isn't bad. Being able to cultivate to the 9th level of the core formation stage at such a young age, in the future, if you become a general, you will surely be capable of slaughtering the enemies in all directions to boost the morale of friendly forces. Teacher, if you have something to say, then be frank about it. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed, as he perceived the meaning within Niu Mang's speech. Look, you have such a straightforward nature, and that's the nature of a general. Then I'll be frank. I want you to come to my Star General Department. How about it? Niu Mang's eyes glowed with a face full of anticipation as he looked at Duan Lingtian. As far as he was concerned, with Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao, he would surely be an expert when he matured. If such a figure were to come from him, his years of being a teacher in Paladin Academy wouldn't be in vain. This, Duan Lingtian was put in a slightly awkward situation. He raised his head and seemed to have noticed something, then his gaze flashed and a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Teacher Niu Mang, I think you should talk to Teacher Sima about this. Niu Mang noticed that the atmosphere was off as well. A middle-aged scholar with a silk headdress and a feather fan in his hand was standing behind Niu Mang and slowly said, Niu Mang, are you trying to poach my student? His pair of wise eyes descended onto Niu Mang. Sima, Niu Mang turned around and laughed embarrassedly when he saw Sima Chongfeng. It's a joke, a joke. Duan Lingtian, follow me. Sima Chongfeng grunted coldly and paid no attention to Niu Mang. He called Duan Lingtian and walked towards the deeper parts of the bamboo forest. You guys go have some food first, I'll come later, Duan Lingtian said to Xiao Yu and the others before catching up to Sima Chongfeng. You two kids have thrown away all the face of my Star General Department's Grade 1 class. As punishment, you two will be in charge of the teacher's lunch money today. You two don't have any objections, right? The sound of Niu Mang's speaking with a sense of justice entered into his ears, causing the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth to twitch unconsciously. Following which was Tianhu's voice. No objections, no objections. Sima Chongfeng stopped his footsteps deep within the bamboo forest, and Duan Lingtian stopped his footsteps as well. You were too rash in this matter. Sima Chongfeng sighed. Obviously, he already knew the details of the entire matter. Teacher, what was rash? Duan Lingtian didn't agree nor deny but instead replied with a question. You better not make nothing of the matter. Since Su Tong didn't die and you're in the right, Paladin Academy won't pursue today's matter. But do you know that Su Tong is the Su clan's direct descendant and that he's been fostered by them? He's even one of the potential candidates for the next patriarch of the Su clan. You crippled Su Tong, and that's akin to giving the Su clan a slap in the face. The Su clan will absolutely not let this go. Sima Chongfeng shook his head. In his eyes, this student of his was truly a fledgling who made little of a tiger and dared to do anything. Teacher, I understand what you mean. However, when a man lives in this world, there are things he must do and things he shouldn't do. To me, that's Su Tong repeatedly proclaiming that he wanted to cripple my Dantane and even taking action to do so already crossed my bottom line. It was merciful of me that I didn't kill him. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused and his face was extremely tranquil. As for the Su clan, if they really want to pursue the matter, then I'll take them on. When a man lives in this world, there are things he must do and things he shouldn't do. From savoring this simple line in detail, Sima Chongfeng was able to realize the wildness and unruliness within Duan Lingtian's words. At this instant, he felt Duan Lingtian's confidence as well, and he glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian. I never imagined that you'd see this matter through so thoroughly. I originally thought that you had only done this out of rashness. Since it's like this, then I won't say any more. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian and Sima Chongfeng left the bamboo forest, and their journey back was peaceful. The Su clan. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused and a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. After returning to the cafeteria, Duan Lingtian sat beside Xiao Yu and the others and ate together. During this time, Xiao Yu and the others naturally were bound to be worried for Duan Lingtian. After all, the Su clan was a colossus to them, and it was difficult to go against them. Duan Lingtian only brushed past it all with a laugh. He had a tranquil expression, it was as if he wasn't related to the matter and it had nothing to do with him. The Su clan was one of the three great clans of the imperial city and were equally as famous as the Duan clan and the Xiao clan. Presently, within the audience hall of the Su clan, all the higher-ups of the Su clan were gathered here. A middle-aged man wearing a black robe with gold edges sat at the head. His back was straight like a spear, and an imposing demeanor was exuded from between his brows. He was precisely the patriarch of the Su clan, Su Boya. Su Boya was nearly 60 years old, and in another few years he would be considered to have stepped into old age. At that time, the seat of the Su clan patriarch would be passed on to the younger generation, and he would retire to help the newly appointed patriarch manage the clan from the shadows. Presently, the atmosphere within the audience hall seemed to be slightly oppressive, and a seat below Su Boya was empty at this moment. Suddenly, heavy footsteps sounded from outside the audience hall, and an aged figure walked in. This was an aged old man with a pair of murky eyes that flashed with bloodthirsty rage, and the aura on his body was restless, it was as if it would explode forth at any moment. Before long, the old man sat at the empty seat below Su Boya. This seat was the seat of the Su clan's grand elder. The old man's identity was obvious, the Su clan's Grand Elder, Su Nan. Grand Elder, is there any hope of healing Su Tong's Dantian? Patriarch Su Bo Ya spoke. His gaze descended upon Su Nan as he spoke with a voice that was mixed with a trace of anticipation. All of the Su clan elders present looked over at Su Nan with eyes that emitted a trace of hope. Patriarch, the Dantian of that grandson of mine had been almost completely shattered by an offensive inscription, so there's no way of saving him. He will probably be unable to accumulate origin energy again in his entire lifetime. Su Nan's tone was mixed with a breathtaking coldness. His son had died at a young age, and he had entrusted all of his hopes to his grandson, Su Tong. In these past few years, he had devoted all his attention to instruct and foster Su Tong. Su Tong didn't disappoint him. He became the disciple with the most outstanding natural talent in the younger generation of the Su clan. And in another few more years, if nothing unexpected were to happen, the seat of the Su clan patriarch would definitely be held by Su Tong. Just when the life of his grandson was about to greet its greatest glory, his grandson's Dantian was crippled by another, and his grandson's entire cultivation was crippled. 170 Chapter 171, Little Python's Breakthrough. Smack. The Su clan's patriarch, Su Bo Ya's face sank and his palm crashed downwards onto the armrest of his seat, causing it to be forcefully smashed into pieces. In terms of natural talent in the martial Dao, Su Tong surpassed him at the same age. As far as he was concerned, under the lead of Su Tong, the Su clan would surely reach even greater glories in the future. However, now everything was destroyed by the hands of an ignorant child. Patriarch, that Duan Lingtian attacked too viciously. We can't let this matter go like this. Yeah, if he isn't punished, how would we uphold the face of our Su clan? He must be punished severely. All the Su clan elders were filled with righteous indignation and were incomparably enraged. Grand Elder, I'll leave this matter for you to handle. The Su clan will support you with its entire strength. Su Bo Ya's gaze descended onto Su Nan, as he was clear in his heart that Su Nan was the most enraged among the people present. Su Tong was Su Nan's own grandson after all. Thank you, Patriarch. Su Nan was slightly excited when he heard what Su Bo Ya said, and his eyes emitted a vicious luster that seemed as if it could swallow someone whole. As far as he was concerned, no matter who it was, at the moment his grandson's Dantian was crippled, that person had stepped past the gates of hell. He wouldn't pay attention to the reasons within, and he didn't care if it was his grandson who provoked the matter or not. All he knew was that what he had to do was burn the bones and scatter the ashes of the person who crippled his grandson. Paladin Academy. On a large tree on a side of the martial arts practice grounds. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Raging Python Form. Duan Lingtian cultivated for the entire afternoon, and only when dusk approached did he notice his cultivation bottleneck loosen up slightly. If nothing unexpected happens, then I'll probably be able to break through within this month. Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered and a trace of a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. The current him was finally able to increase his cultivation to his heart's content like a normal core formation martial artist. As for the tempering of the fleshly body for the raging python form, it was handed to the dragon blood pill to complete. A single dragon blood pill was sufficient to allow his fleshly body to instantly completely its tempering with origin energy. Duan Lingtian, who was in high spirits, jumped off the large tree and watched Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan spar with the other students for a while before leaving Paladin Academy with the two. Duan Lingtian, take care. Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan had serious expressions as they reminded Duan Lingtian. After all, Duan Lingtian was now facing the entire Su clan, which was a colossus that couldn't be taken lightly. Don't worry, Duan Lingtian nodded, and a warm feeling ran through his heart. Duan Lingtian suddenly stopped dead in his tracks after leaving Paladin Academy and parting ways with Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan. At this moment, he could feel the restlessness of the 2 little pythons that were concealed within his sleeve, and it caused his face to sink unconsciously. He became vigilant. The Su clan members had moved so quickly. Duan Lingtian's body moved after taking a deep breath. As if transforming into a bolt of lightning, he quickly concealed himself in the deserted alley that he killed the 2 Duan clan 9th level origin core martial artists the other day. Duan Lingtian had only just taken 2 steps. Whoosh, whoosh. Accompanied by 2 strong gusts of wind, 2 aged figures surrounded Duan Lingtian from the front and back, causing him to have nowhere to run. These were 2 old men over the age of 70, but their eyes were even more spirited than a youth's, they flickered with a breathtaking bright light. It was obvious that their cultivation levels weren't low. At the first moment, Duan Ling Tian relied upon the memories of rebirth martial emperor and his own formidable spiritual force to roughly deduce the cultivation levels of the two. The cultivation levels of these two old men should probably be at the 4th to the 6th level of the nascent soul stage. In terms of strength, they were far from the third prince's estate manager, Husan, that Duan Ling Tian killed last night. The Su clan looks down on me in such a way. They think the two of you are sufficient to kill me. Duan Ling Tian's eyebrows rose and a trace of a sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. Su clan. The two old men were obviously dazed when they heard what Duan Ling Tian said. The old man that stood before Duan Ling Tian looked at Duan Ling Tian with a calm gaze as he slowly said, Duan Ling Tian, looks like you've made quite a lot of enemies. However, we aren't members of the Su clan. Not members of the Su clan. Duan Ling Tian was dazed as he thought this in his heart. Could it be people the fifth prince sent? Or maybe they are people that Duan clan's second master, Duan Rulei, sent. Duan Ling Tian, you killed 2 elders of my Yu clan and 2 outstanding disciples. Today is the day you lose your life. The old man who stood behind Duan Ling Tian said, with a cold and indifferent voice that was like ice, as if it came from the depths of a thaw hole. Yu clan. Duan Ling Tian's eyes focused as he came to an understanding. Never had I expected that just to kill me, you two would personally rush over from such a faraway place like Swallow Mountain County's County City. You really make me feel overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. However, aren't you two afraid I might make you two stay in the Imperial City forever? Duan Ling Tian guessed the identity of the two old men. As he finished speaking, the corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile. Members of the Swallow Mountain County's County City's Yu clan. This was the clan that Yu Hong and Yu Shang, who incurred enmity with him at the Iron Blood Army, were from. Bullshit. The old man that blocked before Duan Ling Tian grunted coldly. He didn't speak any more nonsense as his body moved and he abruptly attacked. Above his head, 600 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form, 4th level of the nascent soul stage. The strength of this old man was much stronger than the Yu clan's grand elder that once intercepted Duan Ling Tian and tried to kill him. The old man behind Duan Ling Tian moved right after the one in front. Another 4th level nascent soul martial artist. Little black, little white, I'll leave it up to you. Duan Ling Tian muttered in a low voice. In the next moment, he abruptly raised his hand. Whoosh, whoosh. A white and a black bolt of lightning flew out at the same time in separate directions from inside his sleeve. Their speed was swift to the limit, causing piercing whistling sounds to explode in the ears of the people present. In the sky, besides the 1,200 ancient mammoth silhouettes drawn upon by the two old men, 1,200 more ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air. A herd of mammoths danced wildly. The two old men, whose imposing manner shot through the sky as they flashed towards Duan Ling Tian, never could have imagined that Duan Ling Tian would actually have such a trump card on hand. Their eyes emitted a strand of dread when they saw 2 fierce beasts with cultivations not one bit inferior to theirs flashing over towards them. Right at this moment, their minds were in turmoil. Poochie, poochie. A bloody hole instantly opened up in each of their chests, and their eyes that were originally buoyant with spirit, dimmed down. Bang, bang, 2 corpses crashed onto the ground, dying with everlasting regret. If they knew beforehand that Duan Ling Tian had 2 fierce beasts guarding him, even if they weren't a match for the 2 little pythons, they wouldn't have been killed so quickly. The surprise attack of the 2 little pythons caused the 2 of them who were similarly at the 4th level of the nascent soul stage to have little to no opportunity to defend against it. When they had reacted to it, there was already no chance of them surviving. Little black, little white, not bad. I'll get the kitchen to especially fry 2 bowls of meat for the 2 of you once we get home. Duan Ling Tian praised the 2 little pythons. The intelligent, small eyes of the 2 little pythons flickered with an excited brilliance when they heard that there would be meat to eat. The Yu clan is like a haunting soul that just doesn't want to leave. Duan Ling Tian sneered before putting away the 2 little pythons within his sleeve. As far as he was concerned, these 2 Yu clan old fellows had virtually made such a long journey just to give away their lives. Duan Ling Tian condensed some pill fire after taking the 2 old men's spatial rings and burned their corpses into ash. Only then did he leave as if nothing had happened. Maybe it was because Husan's spatial ring from yesterday gave Duan Ling Tian such a pleasant surprise, but the few million silver within the 2 Yu clan old men's spatial rings didn't cause any fluctuation in Duan Ling Tian's mood. However, if there was money to gain easily, then it would be a waste to not take it. Night slowly descended. After dinner, Duan Lingtian made true of his promise and asked the kitchen to fry 2 bowls of the 2 little pythons' favorite mouse meat. Of course, it wasn't any ordinary mouse meat, but a 3rd-level core formation fierce beast, the subterranean mouse. Little White, even if it's tasty, don't eat so much. Look at you, you've eaten to the point that you're going to burst, right? A voice pleasant to the ear mixed with a trace of reproof sounded. It was the voice of K'er as she lightly rubbed the little white python's bulging stomach. The 2 little pythons lied on the table with their stomachs protruding out. They were unable to move for very long time. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei were sitting at a side. They couldn't help but burst into laughter when they saw this scene. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's, K'er's, and Li Fei's gazes descended upon the 2 little pythons. They noticed that the markings on the bodies of the little pythons were currently flickering with a glow. The golden markings on the little black python and the silver markings on the little white python slowly flickered and became even more dazzling by the moment. In the end, the little black python was completely enveloped in a golden light, and as for the little white python, it was enveloped by a silver light. Swoosh! Suddenly, Duan Lingtian noticed that strands of brilliant light descended from the skies. This is lunar force! Li Fei exclaimed. So this is the lunar force? Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. He still remembered how the galactic star technique he passed on to Li Fei utilized lunar force and sunbeam force to cultivate. They would be gathered within the body and then condensed into origin energy. However, never had he imagined that the 2 little pythons were actually capable of drawing upon the lunar force. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, only special cultivation methods were capable of drawing upon the lunar force, and the galactic star technique Li Fei cultivated was precisely one of these special cultivation methods. The lunar force poured down as if it were casting a gentle veil upon the night sky. Duan Lingtian noticed that the lunar force that poured down actually resonated with the silver light in the surface of the little white python's body, and the 2 joined together. Subsequently, the gold light on the little black python's body was unwilling to fall behind, as it too converged with the silver light on the little white python's body. The 3 sources of light merged together. After half an hour, the lunar force withdrew itself, the golden light on the little black python and the silver light on the little white python slowly faded away as well. Duan Lingtian's formidable spiritual force noticed the changes that occurred to the 2 little pythons at the first possible moment. They seemed to have broken through. 5th level of the nascent soul stage. Hiss hiss, hiss hiss. Before long, the 2 little pythons flipped their bodies around and stood up straight. They flicked their tongues as their gazes descended upon the remaining fried meat before lowering their heads and starting to eat once more. Their stomachs that were bulging to the point that they seemed like they were about to burst had sunk down, as the food they had eaten before had now been completely digested. Duan Lingtian and the 2 girls beside him gazed at each other. They didn't know what had just happened. What type of snake are you 2 little fellows, actually? So bizarre. Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly. He vaguely perceived how the origins of these 2 little pythons weren't simple. From everything they had just revealed, it wasn't impossible for them to even metamorphose into demon beasts in the future. 171 Chapter 172, Origin Freezing Pill. Duan Lingtian raised his head to gaze upon the night sky, and the dense, starry sky reflected into his eyes. This array of stars should be many planets, right? According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, Cloud Continent is vast and boundless, and at the end of the lands in every direction is a vast, oceanic expanse, where the size of the ocean is boundless. Rebirth Martial Emperor had once gone out to sea, desiring to seek its end, but eventually he noticed that the boundless ocean seemed to not have any end. In the end, he was worried that he would get lost and didn't go any deeper. A segment of Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories flashed within Duan Lingtian's mind. In other words, Rebirth Martial Emperor didn't explore deep into this vast world. Maybe the cloud continent I'm currently on, combined together to that boundless ocean, is a planet as well. Duan Lingtian guessed within his heart. At this moment, he made a great aspiration within his heart. In the future, if he is able to stand at the peak of Cloud Continent, then he will definitely bring along his family and go out to sea to explore this vast world. He wanted to see if this place was a planet or not. According to his estimations, if it was a planet, then it was definitely a planet countless times larger than Earth. The speed of Rebirth Martial Emperor at his peak was countless times faster than the planes on Earth in his previous life, and with rebirth martial emperor's speed, if he were to be put on Earth, then he would be able to circle around the entire planet in the blink of an eye. If this piece of land below my feet is really a planet. Duan Lingtian's gaze looked at the array of stars in the horizon, and he thought in his heart, then which planet is Earth? Earth was his home, and there were too many of his memories there. If he had the chance to return, then he would surely take it. Not for any other reason but to burn the bones and shatter the ashes of that broker who set him up. Although, he still needed to thank that broker to a certain extent, as the broker gave a much more wonderful life. But the two matters can't be considered together, some scores still had to be settled. Young master, what are you thinking of? K.'s pleasing voice sounded, causing Duan Lingtian to return to his senses before lightly smiling. I was thinking of whether other humans like us exist on those stars. Young master, how could you think like this? If there were people on those stars, then they would have surely fallen down long ago. K.'r gazed upon the array of stars in the night sky, and her beautiful eyebrows knitted as she spoke with an innocent and pure expression. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. Could he say it? Could it be that he would need to explain what gravitational attraction was to K.'r? Meanwhile, Li Fei looked up into the array of stars in the night sky as well. Her clear eyes focused and she was absorbed in thought. Duan Lingtian and his two fiancés were admiring the moon and gazing at the stars, whereas outside the gate of the Su clan estate, two figures walked swiftly in single file to enter the estate. The figure in the front was a young man around the age of 22 or 23, and the figure in the back was a young man around the age of 20 who was wearing red clothes and had a frosty expression. There was a sheathed sword within his arms, and his pair of cold eyes flickered with a trace of a strange light. After a short moment, Grand Elder, Su Li is here. Before a vast courtyard, the young man who was leading the way respectfully spoke. Let him in, an aged voice sounded out from within. The frosty young man who wore red clothes and held a sword in his arms was precisely Su Li. Su Li's eyes flashed with a complicated sheen, and he eventually walked into the courtyard with large strides. Within the vast courtyard, an aged figure stood there still as a mountain, and the figure's pair of eyes that emitted a bright light descended onto Su Li. Su Li stood there after entering and didn't speak a single word. Is your father well? The Su clan's grand elder, Su Nan's, gaze descended onto Su Li as he slowly asked. Not bad, he eats well and sleeps well, Su Li said indifferently, as if he was unwilling to converse further with Su Nan. You brought me here, if there's something you want to say, then speak frankly. Su Nan took his time as he spoke. I still remember that your father was a sword cultivator, and his shadowless sword was something that rarely met a match amongst his peers in our Su clan. Unfortunately, he was too arrogant and actually challenged Duan Rufeng, who was flourishing within the Duan clan at the time. In the end, not only did his sword snap, he even suffered a body full of internal injuries that were difficult to heal, and it was difficult for him to utilize the origin energy within his body ever again. I heard that you have a good relationship with Duan Lingtian, the son of Duan Rufeng, and are even friends. What? The son of the enemy that put your father into such a miserable state, you don't hate him in the slightest. As he spoke up to this point, Su Nan's gaze sharpened as if it could penetrate everything. Why would I hate him? Su Li asked indifferently and with a calm tone. If you called me here just to drive a wedge between us, then you've wasted your time. Even though his father was defeated at the hands of Duan Lingtian and suffered a body full of internal injuries, his father had never once hated Duan Rufeng. Even to the extent that his father would feel heartfelt respect whenever he mentioned Duan Rufeng. Even though they were far away from the imperial city, when his father found out of Duan Rufeng's disappearance that year, his father felt a sense of loss for a period of time. At that time, although he was still young, he was still able to remember it clearly. He, who was influenced by his father since a young age, would naturally not hate Duan Rufeng. Moreover, the reason his father left the Su clan and left the imperial city that year, wasn't at all because of the group of vile people in the Su clan. If he were to talk about hatred, then he hated the Su clan much more. Humph, you really are like your father, ignorant. Su Nan's face sank. If there's nothing else, then I'll be taking my leave. Su Li's gaze focused as a cold light flashed within, and the hand which held onto his sword tightened. The person he admired the most in his life was his father, and he wouldn't tolerate others' disrespect. Since it's come to this, then I'll be frank, take this thing first. Su Nan raised his hand and threw a small jade bottle to Su Li. Su Li frowned, as he was able to discern that this was a pill bottle. However, he didn't think that Su Nan would be kind and gift a medicinal pill to him. This is an origin freezing pill. Su Nan slowly spoke. Su Li's face went grim, as he naturally knew what an origin freezing pill was. Although it couldn't be considered a poisonous pill, if it were to be consumed by a martial artist below the origin core stage, then the origin energy within that martial artist's entire body would be suppressed, and that martial artist wouldn't be able to utilize his origin energy for 10 hours. Even if the person only consumed a tiny bit, their origin energy would still be suppressed for at least half an hour. In this instant, Su Li understood Su Nan's intentions. You want me to give Duan Ling Tian this origin freezing pill? You're extremely intelligent. Su Nan's gaze flashed as he spoke slowly. I know you think of him as a friend, so I won't force you. You don't have to personally kill him, you only need to make him consume the origin freezing pill during his meal. It's fine even if it's only a shred. At that time, our Su clan disciples at Paladin Academy will take care of it personally. Do you think it's possible? Su Li sneered. He raised his hand, planning to toss away the pill bottle. Su Nan's face sank as he coldly said, if you toss away this origin freezing pill, then there'll be no room for turning back. What? Threatening me? Do you think that I, Su Li, am the type of person that would harm my friends to save my own life? Su Li laughed in disdain. He would rather die than sell out his friends, not to mention harm the lives of his friends. Su Nan's gaze focused as he slowly spoke. Not bad, you're exactly the same as your father all those years ago. However, you don't have a choice. Our Su clan has long ago found out about you and your parents' home in Flowing Wind City's Martial Tomb Town. I'll give you 2 days. If you don't give Duan Ling Tian that origin freezing pill within 2 days, then I'll send people riding Fergana horses to the Martial Tomb Town and take your parents' lives. Su Li's face went pale. Although his father's cultivation wasn't low, due to the hidden injuries within his body, he was unable to utilize his origin energy. His mother is only an ordinary wife, so her cultivation was even inferior to Su Li's. Despicable. Never had Su Li imagined that the Su clan's grand elder would actually be so despicable that he would use the lives of Su Li's parents to threaten Su Li. The lives of your parents are in your hands, you should look out for yourself. Su Nan lightly smiled as if Su Li was within his grasp before waving his hand to ask Su Li to leave. Su Li took a deep breath, and his gaze flickered as he sunk into a fight with his own morality. In the end, he still held onto the pill bottle within his hand and left the Su clan estate. At dawn the next day, after breakfast, Duan Ling Tian brought along the 2 little pythons and arrived at Paladin Academy as usual. The matter which occurred yesterday was obviously suppressed intentionally by Paladin Academy, so news of it didn't spread. The group of Star Mastermind Department students in the classroom didn't size Duan Ling Tian up with strange gazes. The entire morning passed in peace. At noon, Duan Ling Tian's group once again gathered for a meal in the cafeteria. Su Li, why's your expression so unsightly? Duan Ling Tian noticed that Su Li's expression was slightly unnatural and couldn't help himself from asking. I wonder what happened to this fellow. He's had this sour face since early in the morning. Tianhu shook his head. It's nothing. Under Xiao Xuan and Xiao Yu's concerned gazes, Su Li shook his head. Before long, the food was served, and with it was a jug of wine. It feels so gratifying every time I think about what happened yesterday. Let's have a proper toast to it. Tianhu smiled as he extended his hand to pick up the wine jug. Slap. Su Li raised his hand and hid away Tianhu's hand, and grabbed onto the wine jug before him. The sun is rising from the west if you're actually taking the initiative to pour wine for us. Tianhu had a face full of disbelief. If it wasn't for all of you arriving on time yesterday, my entire cultivation would have been crippled by that Su Tong. Su Li murmured. What are you talking about? We're all friends. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled. Su Li, when did you become so sentimental? Come, hurry up and pour the wine. At a table not far away, 2 young men sat together. Looks like Su Li is about to make his move. Humph, he still said that they're friends, but isn't he selling him out all the same? Even till death, that Duan Ling Tian probably wouldn't have imagined that his good friend would drug him. The 2 young men used a voice only the 2 of them could hear as they whispered to each other. However, after we've dealt with that Duan Ling Tian, we'll have to leave Paladin Academy as well. So be it, the reward that the Grand Elder promised us is sufficient for us to live out the rest of our life without worry. 172 Chapter 173, The Vice Dean's Rage. They've drank the wine Su Li poured. The eyes of the two young men abruptly shone. Slap! Just at this moment, they saw the wine cup within Su Li's hand slip and fall to the ground before shattering. Su Li, this fellow, why are you so careless? Tianhu shook his head with a smile. Right at this moment, Duan Ling Tian's face went grim, as his formidable spiritual force vaguely felt a trace of danger. Xiao Yu, who was sitting opposite of Duan Ling Tian, seemed to have seen something. His pupils constricted and his face went grim as he shouted explosively, Duan Ling Tian, be careful. Whoosh, whoosh, 2 3-foot-long blades that glimmered with a cold light originated from the hands of two unfamiliar young men. They whistled out, flashing straight towards Duan Ling Tian. Fierce sword lights brought about piercing whistling sounds in the air as they flashed towards Duan Ling Tian's back. Above the two young men, 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. 2 9th-stage core formation martial artists. Presumptuous. Right at this moment, an aged voice that contained rampaging rage echoed out from the cafeteria's pavilion. A surge of wind could be vaguely noticed on the stairs leading down from the pavilion. An aged figure flashed down swiftly, but unfortunately, it was obvious that he wouldn't make it. The swords in the hands of the two young men had already arrived before Duan Ling Tian and looked like they were about to pierce through Duan Ling Tian's back and come out the other side. The faces of Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tianhu all went grim, but their cultivations were far from the two people who had abruptly attacked to kill Duan Ling Tian, so they were utterly incapable of helping Duan Ling Tian in time. When they had only just stood up, the swords of the two young men had already reached Duan Ling Tian's back. In the nick of time, Duan Ling Tian made his move. Origin energy exploded out from beneath his feet, and 12 ancient mammoth silhouettes abruptly condensed into form above him. Spirit Serpent Movement Technique. Duan Ling Tian's body moved at an extremely tricky angle, barely dodging the two swords that flashed over swiftly. Not only that, his leg trembled and his entire body seemed to transform into a spirit serpent, and he stuck closely to the two young men that attacked him as he flashed behind them. You're courting death. Duan Ling Tian's gaze went cold. He raised his hand and a violet sword light flashed out. 15 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above Duan Ling Tian. Sword drawing arts. Merely a single sword strike brought about 2 strands of dazzling fresh blood, and the two young men that approached in full fury flew out with their eyes wide open as they fiercely collided with the wall. In the short moment before death, their gazes didn't look at Duan Ling Tian but instead descended upon Su Li. After one of the young men took his last breath, the other young man struggled to raise his hand. He wanted to point at Su Li with a face full of fury. But unfortunately, his hand hadn't even been raised when he took his last breath. Dead. Before they died, the two young men only had one last thought within their minds. They'd been cheated by Su Li. This Su Li, not only did he not drug them, but he even shattered the wine cup and gave them the secret signal, causing them to think that Su Li had already succeeded, and thus they impatiently wanted to kill Duan Ling Tian. As far as they were concerned, Duan Ling Tian was drugged and unable to utilize his origin energy. Wasn't killing Duan Ling Tian an easy job for them? But who would have known that Duan Ling Tian wasn't drugged at all? Duan Ling Tian's gaze descended onto the two corpses on the ground, and his face was extremely unsightly. These two people were obviously higher-grade students of Paladin Academy. Who the heck had sent them to kill him? As a student of Paladin Academy, if you dare kill someone within the academy, it was akin to giving up your future, because Paladin Academy would expel you. People the third prince sent. Or was it the fifth prince? Or maybe it's the Duan clan's second master, Duan Rulei, and also that Su clan. Vice Dean. Meanwhile, under the respectful greetings of the crowd of students, the gray-robed old man that flashed down from the cafeteria pavilion earlier had already walked over. The old man's expression was extremely unsightly. There were actually students that dared to strike a killing blow towards another student within Paladin Academy. Luckily, the person that was attacked was fine, otherwise, Paladin Academy would suffer a huge loss of face. Vice Dean. Duan Ling Tian greeted the old man, and his expression slightly eased up a little bit. The academy will give you an explanation regarding this matter. The old man had a serious expression as he slowly spoke. Duan Ling Tian slowly nodded as streams of light flashed within his head. What he wanted to know the most right now was who the heck sent these two people. Subsequently, the old man walked over to the two corpses and flipped through their student badges, then his face sank. They're grade 4 students, does anyone recognize them? Followed by the old man's words, the crowd of people moved to surround them before starting to point fingers. Isn't this our class, Su Ping and Su Ji? It really is them. They seem to be members of the Su clan, right? But why would they want to kill Duan Lingtian? Two madmen, actually daring to strike a killing blow within the academy. In next to no time, there were people who recognized the two young men that were killed by Duan Lingtian. Su clan. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused as an awe-inspiring killing intent arose within him. However, he was slightly curious. Why would the Su clan only send two 9th-level core formation martial artists to kill him? This was almost no different from suicide. No matter what, boundless rage still rose within his heart. He'd taken note of this debt. The Su clan. The old man's face sank when he heard the discussion of the group of students. Good, what a good Su clan. He had received reports of the conflict between Duan Lingtian and the Su clan from the two academy teachers yesterday, and thus he didn't feel this to be unexpected. However, the fact that members of the Su clan had actually dared to strike a killing blow within the academy had undoubtedly touched his bottom line. This time the vice dean is really angry. The Su clan is probably going to have a hard time. The hearts of some of the youths that were spectating trembled, as they vaguely guessed. Duan Lingtian, are you all right? Meanwhile, Xiao Yu and the others arrived beside Duan Lingtian with faces full of concern. I'm fine. Duan Lingtian shook his head. It's only two 9th-level core formation martial artists. They're not enough to kill me. Not to mention only two 9th-level core formation martial artists, as long as the martial artists that surprise attacked him weren't of the 7th-level nascent soul stage or above, they would undoubtedly die. Earlier, if it wasn't for him suppressing the two little pythons that were concealed within his sleeve and preventing them from attacking, those two Su clan members wouldn't even have the opportunity to get close to him. The two little pythons were his trump card. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't easily reveal their existence. Are there any Su clan members amongst you? The old man's gaze swept past the spectating crowd. Instantly, a small amount of people's faces went pale, but they still summoned up some courage and stood out. All of you, bring along the corpses of your clan members and follow me to the Su clan. The old man walked forward in large strides and left the cafeteria. His tone contained strands of suppressed rage mixed within. Duan Lingtian's group sat down and continued their meal. What happened earlier was just a farce to them. When they were nearly finished eating, Duan Lingtian noticed that Su Li seemed to be hesitating to speak. He couldn't help but laugh and say, Su Li, if you have something to say, then be frank about it, we aren't outsiders. Xiao Yu, Xiao Xuan, and Tian who also noticed that something was wrong with Su Li. I want to borrow 1 million silver from you guys. Su Li eventually spoke and went silent after he finished. 1 million silver. Tian whose eyes went wide open the moment Su Li spoke. Only Duan Lingtian, Xiao Xuan, and Xiao Yu didn't have any huge reaction and were only slightly surprised about why Su Li would suddenly wanted so much money. However, they didn't ask. I have 200,000 silver on me. Xiao Yu was the first to speak. I have 300,000 silver. Su Li, if you aren't in a rush, I'll go gather the money when I return home tonight and give it to you tomorrow, Xiao Xuan said. Slap. Duan Lingtian didn't speak as he extended his hand into his pocket. He then raised his hand and slapped a stack of silver bills before Su Li. Precisely 1 million silver. FK. Duan Lingtian, you're so rich. Tian who fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva and glanced at Duan Lingtian with an astonished gaze. Xiao Yu's and Xiao Xuan's gazes descended upon Duan Lingtian. They were able to produce 1 million silver as well, but they wouldn't keep so much money on hand all the time. Duan Lingtian, where'd you get so much money from? Xiao Yu had a face full of amazement. He was the grandson of the Xiao clan's supreme elder, so it wasn't strange if he produced a few million silver casually. But Duan Lingtian was only a branch family disciple of the Li clan, and he was even a disciple with another surname. The patriarch gave me 2 million silver when I left Aurora City, Duan Lingtian casually said. Looks like that Li clan's patriarch looks at your future extremely favorably, otherwise, he wouldn't have put down such a large investment. Xiao Yu shook his head with a smile. However, he's made the right bet. He was confident that with Duan Lingtian's strength and natural talent, the Li clan's investment would surely bring about huge returns. Thank you. Su Li glanced at Duan Lingtian gratefully before putting away the silver. We're all friends, what are you being so courteous for? Duan Lingtian made nothing of it, as the current him possessed a vast sum of a few tens of millions worth of silver. A mere 1 million silver was something he didn't really mind anymore. He didn't plan on asking Su Li to return the money. As a friend, was far more important than money to him. He, however, didn't notice that a strand of a strange light flickered deep within Su Li's eyes. The Su clan estate. Within a vast courtyard, a young man with a ghastly pale expression sat at a side with eyes that contained crimson color within. Grandfather, do you really have a way to make that Duan Lingtian die? The young man took a deep breath. Extreme hatred was mixed within his voice. This young man was precisely Su Tong, who had his Dantian crippled by Duan Lingtian. The original #1 genius of the younger generation of the Su clan, an existence at the third level of the origin core stage, had now become a cripple, and his entire strength merely remained at the 9th level of the body tempering stage. Tong, don't worry, that Duan Lingtian will certainly die by tomorrow. The Su clan's grand elder Su Nan, who stood at the side, spoke slowly with a voice filled with confidence. Grand elder, are you sure that Duan Lingtian will certainly die? Right at this moment, a cold and indifferent voice sounded from outside the courtyard, and within the voice was a vague trace of fury mixed within. Patriarch. Su Nan hurriedly bowed when he saw the person who had arrived, and Su Tong, who was at the side, followed suit and bowed as well. 173 Chapter 174, Su Li's Decision. Grand Elder, shouldn't you give me a good explanation on some matters? Patriarch Su Boya had a dignified expression mixed with a trace of rage, and his eyes stared fixedly at the old man. Patriarch, what do you mean? A bad premonition arose within Su Nan's heart, as he understood the Patriarch and thus knew that the Patriarch wouldn't be so enraged over some small matter. Paladin Academy's Zan Shang just left our Su clan. Su Boya's face was extremely unsightly as he said, in a low voice, Grand Elder, I left this matter to you because I trusted you would be able to deal with it properly and because Su Tong is your grandson, but what you did this time did indeed lack consideration, and not only were you unable to kill Duan Lingtian, you even brought great trouble for our Su clan. Su Nan reacted after hearing what Su Boya said, and his face went pale. Could it be that the plan had failed? Patriarch, what actually happened? Su Nan's breathing became hurried. Just a while ago, Paladin Academy's Vice Dean Zan sent over the corpses of Su Ping and Su Ji. Su Boya took a deep breath. Su Ping, Su Ji. Su Nan's face went grim. Patriarch, Su Ping and Su Ji are dead. Su Ping and Su Ji were precisely the two pawns within his plan, pawns that would cooperate with Su Li to slaughter Duan Lingtian. Exactly, not only are they dead, but they were even killed by that Duan Lingtian. Su Boya said, in a low voice. It would have been fine if they had succeeded and killed Duan Lingtian, Paladin Academy would expel them at most, and it would have no effect on our Su clan. But not only did they not kill Duan Lingtian, they were even killed by Duan Lingtian. Now in order to give Duan Lingtian an explanation, the Paladin Academy's Vice Dean Zan isn't willing to let the matter go. Do you know that just for this matter, that Vice Dean Zan reduced our Su clan's yearly recommendation quota to Paladin Academy from 5 to 3? As Su Boya finished speaking, the rage on his face grew stronger. In the past, 5 places weren't even enough for the group of Su clan higher-ups to divide amongst themselves. Now that it had been reduced to 3, he could imagine the expressions on the faces of those higher-ups once they found out about everything. Su Nan's body trembled and his face went ghastly pale when he heard this. He really went for wool and came home shorn. No, impossible, it's impossible that they'd attack Duan Lingtian before Su Li drugged him. Su Nan was unwilling to believe that all this was real. Humph. Su Boya's face sank as he grunted coldly, then he flicked his sleeve and turning around to leave. Grand Elder, if you're unable to deal with this matter, then feel free to speak up, I'll send someone else to deal with it. After Su Boya left, Su Nan pondered for a long time but was still unable to wrap his head around it. The plan that he considered to be perfect, why would it turn out like this? There was only one possibility, which was Su Li didn't follow the plan and even sold him out. Su Li had joined forces with Duan Lingtian to cheat and kill the 2 disciples of his Su clan. Right at this moment, Grand Elder, there's a letter here for you. Just at this moment, a humble voice sounded from outside the courtyard, and a Su clan disciple passed a letter to Su Nan. Su Nan received the letter and opened it to take a look. Grand Elder Su Nan, I'm truly sorry. I accidentally let the wine cup slip during lunch at noon today, and caused your people to mistake it for the secret signal to slaughter Duan Lingtian. Signed, Su Li. There was only this short passage of words on the letter, but it angered Su Nan to the point that his body trembled and the lifeblood within his body roiled. Pooh, In the end, Su Nan was forcefully angered to the point that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Nan's eyes flickered with a luster of bloodthirst, and his icy cold voice emitted coldness that reached the bone. Su Li, I'll make your entire family be unable to die a natural death. Su Tong, who was not far away, had an extremely unsightly expression. He had perceived that his enemy, Duan Lingtian, had survived. Paladin Academy. Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged in cultivation atop a large tree at the side of the martial arts practice ground, and he was fully immersed in a peaceful state. Duan Lingtian. Suddenly, an anxious voice jolted Duan Lingtian awake. Duan Lingtian opened his eyes to notice Tianhu hastily running over from afar. Duan Lingtian turned over to drop down from the large tree before going to greet Tianhu. Tianhu, what happened? Duan Lingtian, Su Li has left. Tianhu smiled bitterly. Left? Duan Lingtian didn't react for a moment. This is the letter Su Li left for you. Only after Tianhu passed over the letter did Duan Lingtian's face turn serious. Duan Lingtian opened the letter. Duan Lingtian, when you see this letter, I'm probably already riding the Fergana horse I bought with the money you lent me. I'm going to return home. Last night when I left the Su clan estate, I had already made this decision. Even if I, Su Li, have to give up my future, I still wouldn't harm my own friends. I'll be bringing my parents along once I leave home this time. As for where I'm going, I haven't thought of it yet. Maybe I'll leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye, and say goodbye to Xiao Yu and the others for me. Maybe one day in the future we'll meet again, at that time, I'll return the money I owe you. Signed, Su Li. Swoosh, Duan Lingtian crushed the letter in his hand into a ball. Besides containing these words of farewell, the letter which Su Li wrote him also explained what exactly happened. Su Li left Paladin Academy and gave up his own future. Number 1, for the sake of his parents' safety. Number 2, for the sake of Duan Lingtian, this friend of his. At this moment, many of the questions within Duan Lingtian's heart were unraveled. Why Su Li accidentally slipped and dropped a cup, and why those two Su clan members had attacked him with so much confidence. So it turned out that those two Su clan members thought that Su Li had made him consume an origin freezing pill. Su Li, Duan Lingtian's heart trembled. Although Su Li was usually quiet and reserved, at this moment, he could feel the friendship of Su Li. For the sake of Duan Lingtian, this friend of his, Su Li was willing to give up his future. Su Li, I believe in you. We'll surely meet again. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, and a trace of anticipation flashed within his eyes. His mood was slightly heavy. Duan Lingtian, however, didn't know that after parting ways today, his next meeting with Su Li will be many years later. Duan Lingtian, Su Li left. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan walked over. Take a look. Duan Lingtian sighed and passed over the letter that was crumpled into a ball to Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu opened the letter, and Xiao Xuan and Tianhu gathered together to read it as well. That Su clan's grand elder, despicable. After he finished reading the letter, Tianhu's face went extremely gloomy, and he gnashed his teeth in fury. He and Su Li became friends from battling each other, and they had even entered the Star General Department together. He'd long since taken Su Li as a good friend within his heart, but never had he imagined that Su Li would leave like this. In the future, he wondered if there would be a chance to meet again. After they finished reading the letter, rage appeared in the eyes of Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan, and at the same time, it was mixed with a trace of admiration. Su Li gave up the great future before him for the sake of his friend and thus had left. Such actions were worthy of respect. Duan Lingtian once again sat atop the large tree and rested himself on the tree trunk. He looked up through the luxurious foliage into the bright, blue sky. Su clan, since you want to play, then I'll accompany you and play nicely. Duan Lingtian's eyes slowly narrowed, and a cold expression appeared on the corners of his mouth. Su Li's departure caused Duan Lingtian's mentality to undergo a certain degree of change. The current Duan Lingtian seemed to have once again become that cold and unfeeling weapons specialist he formerly was. At dusk, outside Paladin Academy, a luxurious carriage was parked at the side of the road. The person who drove the carriage was a white-browed old man with extraordinary bearings, and with a glance anyone would know that he was no simple figure. Duan Lingtian noticed the carriage as soon as he walked out of Paladin Academy's gate, but he paid no attention to it. He said his farewells to Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan before walking forward by himself. Just when he passed by the side of the carriage. Whoosh! A figure that was fast like a bolt of lightning seemed to move like a ghost and blocked in front of Duan Lingtian. Only now did Duan Lingtian notice that the person who before his eyes was precisely that white-browed old man who drove the carriage. Duan Lingtian's face sank. At this moment, he could feel the changes of the two little pythons that were concealed within his sleeve. Relying upon the experiences of rebirth Martial Emperor and his own spiritual force, he could deduce the old man's cultivation level. This old man was a 7th level nascent soul expert or above. In terms of strength, he was even not inferior to the 3rd prince's manager, Husan. However, this white-browed old man obviously wasn't at the level of being a half-step void stage expert like the Divine Might Marquis. Unless a figure like this were to surprise attack him when he was completely defenseless or not on guard, he was confident in instantly killing the old man by relying on the bone corrosion inscription. "You are Duan Lingtian?" The white-browed old man asked in a low voice, as he scrutinized Duan Lingtian with a condescending gaze. "FK off." Duan Lingtian's gaze was ice-cold and his face sank. He had always disdained paying attention to this sort of old fellow who gets self-conceited because of their seniority. The white-browed old man was startled. He obviously had never imagined that Duan Lingtian would dare have such an attitude towards him. Instantly, a trace of rage appeared on his face. Just when he was about to lose his temper. "Old boy, don't forget our real motive." A man's voice that didn't have any fluctuations in emotion sounded from within the carriage, causing the white-browed old man to instantly restrain his fury. Duan Lingtian's brows rose, and he was slightly surprised. It looked like the person inside the carriage wasn't simple. The white-browed old man suppressed his rage and said to Duan Lingtian, "My liege requests your presence." "Sorry, I'm not interested." Duan Lingtian shrugged indifferently. "Don't move." Right at this moment, a delicate shout echoed out from within the carriage. This time it was the voice of a woman. This voice seemed as if he had heard it somewhere, but Duan Lingtian couldn't recall it for a moment. Subsequently, the voice of the woman sounded once more. This time she spoke to the man within the carriage. "Cousin, this Duan Lingtian doesn't know what's good for him. I think we should just ask Old Bai to directly kill him." Subsequently, it was deathly silent within the carriage. "It's her." Duan Lingtian finally remembered. Wasn't this voice the voice of that Tong Li? Then the person who she called cousin, besides the 5th prince, who could it be? 174 Chapter 175, Counter-Tracking. So it's the 5th prince. I've really been impolite. Duan Lingtian glanced at the carriage before lightly smiling. If there's nothing else that 5th prince needs, then I'll be leaving. Duan Lingtian continued walking forward after he finished speaking. Wait. Right at this moment, the 5th prince's voice that contained no feelings once again sounded. Duan Lingtian stopped his steps. He was extremely curious, what the heck did this 5th prince want to do? "Kneel down and kowtow 3 times, then the enmity between you and my cousin will be ridden off." The 5th prince's voice continued to echo out, a voice that had a tone that allowed no dispute. "Kneel, kowtow." Duan Lingtian's face went grim and rage arose within his eyes. "Cousin, I don't want him to kowtow, I want him dead." Tong Li's icy cold voice subsequently sounded from within the carriage with a tone that seemed as if there was no room for discussion. "Two idiots." Duan Lingtian sneered, and continued to walk forward. "Duan Lingtian, if you just walk off like this, then you'll surely regret it." The 5th prince's voice continued to echo out. "Sorry, but the word regret doesn't exist in Duan Lingtian's dictionary." Duan Lingtian's face seemed to have been covered in a layer of ice. He paid absolutely no attention to the 5th prince's threats. There was gold beneath a man's knees, and his knees only bent for the heavens, earth, and his parents. It would be impossible even for the Supreme Emperor to make him bow and kneel, let alone a mere prince. Presumptuous. The white-browed old man's face went gloomy and a terrifying aura was emitted from within him as if he wanted to catch up to Duan Lingtian and kill him on the spot. Duan Lingtian stopped his footsteps. His gaze focused and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. If this white-browed old man were to attack him, then he'd activate the bone corrosion inscription and annihilate him at the first possible moment. "Old Bai, let's go." The 5th prince's voice that vaguely contained a trace of coldness sounded. The white-browed old man caught his breath and suppressed the rage within his heart before driving the carriage and leaving. Within the carriage, Tong Li had a face full of displeasure. "Cousin, didn't you say you would help me vent my anger?" Why did you only ask that Duan Lingtian to kneel down earlier? The fifth prince lightly smiled. Cousin, death isn't the worst punishment to some people. When it comes to a person like Duan Lingtian, someone who is so unyielding and prideful, making him kneel down and kowtow is much more difficult than making him die. However, it can be said that I gave him a chance today. In the future, even if I really kill him, the Duan clan can't say anything about it. Tong Li seemed to come to an understanding and was slightly embarrassed. Cousin, I've misunderstood you. However, didn't the Duan Lingtian refuse the Duan clan and doesn't consider himself a Duan clan disciple? Cousin, why are you still worrying about that Duan clan? The fifth prince's eyes focused. Be that as it may, the blood of a Duan clan direct descendant still flows within him. Don't worry, cousin brother will absolutely not let anyone who bullied you go. Just let him live for a few more days. As he finished speaking, a sense of doting appeared on the fifth prince's face. Thank you, cousin. Tong Li's face burst into a smile and her eyes flickered with a malicious sheen. It was as if she had already seen the scene of Duan Lingtian's corpse being torn into pieces by her. On the other side, this fifth prince is practically even more arrogant than that third prince. Duan Lingtian's heart went slightly cold as he walked down the road. You better not come offend me, or else, even if you're a noble descendant of the imperial family, I still won't show mercy. Today, Duan Lingtian's mood wasn't great originally due to Su Li's departure, so flames of fury vaguely arose within him. Now with the appearance of the fifth prince and Tong Li, and that attitude of looking at him in a condescending manner, it was like putting oil to the fire, causing his fury to increase explosively and be difficult to restrain. Only when he arrived near the Divine Might Marquis estate did Duan Lingtian's expression ease up and a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. In the entire imperial city, besides his family and his few friends, only the Divine Might Marquis estate could warm his heart. Duan Lingtian arrived before the Divine Might Marquis estate's gate, where a young guard soldier took a step forward and fiercely shouted at him, "Halt!" Slap! Before Duan Lingtian could even speak, another middle-aged soldier ran over and raised his hand to give the young soldier a slap on the back of his head. Brother Zhang, why'd you hit me? The young soldier turned around and looked angrily at the middle-aged soldier. The middle-aged soldier paid no attention to the young soldier. He respectfully led Duan Lingtian into the Divine Might Marquis estate. Young Master Lingtian, please come in. You know me. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. He remembered that this person wasn't amongst the guard soldiers that were present when he came the last time. Young Master Lingtian, the other day when Vice General Pang led you into the estate, I just happened to have seen you, the middle-aged soldier said respectfully. He clearly saw how Vice General Pang had a respectful appearance and didn't dare neglect this youth when he led him in the estate the other day. Duan Lingtian nodded before saying, "You continue with your work. I'll go look for the Marquis myself." Duan Lingtian entered the Divine Might Marquis estate by himself after he finished speaking, and moved familiarly within. Brother Zhang, who is he? The young soldier rubbed the back of his head, but he wasn't angry, as he had realized that the violet-clothed youth wasn't simple. Humph. Kid, you're really brave from your ignorance. As for who he is, even I am not really sure. All I know is that when he came the last time, it was Vice General Peng that personally led him in. Moreover, when he left, the Marquis and Junior Marquis personally sent him out. The middle-aged soldier had a face full of fear. Now tell me if I ought to have hit you or not. The young soldier's face went pale from fright and then he hurriedly nodded. Yes, yes. After entering the Divine Might Marquis estate, Duan Lingtian went directly to the audience hall. After the soldiers who guarded the audience hall reported his arrival, Duan Lingtian once again met the Divine Might Marquis, Ni Yuan. Little Tian. Ni Yuan had a wide grin on his face when he saw Duan Lingtian. What, have you come this time because you need Uncle Ni to help you with something? Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. Uncle Ni really predicts things like a prophet. Ni Yuan derided, "Kid, don't give your Uncle Ni that. Let me guess, you probably came because of the matter with the Su clan, right?" Uncle Ni, you're well informed. Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as he lightly smiled. Students from the Su clan within Paladin Academy tried to assassinate another student but were instead killed by their target. The Vice Dean was enraged, and he personally went to the Su clan and reduced the Su clan's recommendation quota into Paladin Academy from 5 to 3. Looks like that Vice Dean Zan really cares for you. Ni Yuan looked at Duan Lingtian with a spurious smile. Duan Lingtian's eyes focused. He knew that the vice dean had gone to the Sioux clan, but he didn't know that the vice dean had cut down the recommendation quota to Paladin Academy of the Sioux clan to 3. For a moment, a sense of gratitude to the old man arose within Duan Lingtian. Speak, what did you come to Uncle Ni for? Ni Yuan glanced at Duan Lingtian dotingly as he asked. Uncle Ni, I want the information of all the Sioux clan's businesses within the Imperial City, including the information of the people in charge of those businesses. Duan Lingtian proclaimed the reason for his arrival. You came here for this? Ni Yuan was slightly surprised. He thought that Duan Lingtian would want him to come forward and suppress the Sioux clan's spirit, but never had he imagined that Duan Lingtian would actually come for his. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Nothing else? Ni Yuan asked. Nothing. Duan Lingtian shook his head. He came to the Divine Might Marquis estate precisely for this information. As for anything else, he was able to deal with it by himself. All right, come get it 3 days from now. Ni Yuan glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian and didn't ask any further. Thank you, Uncle Ni. Then I'll be heading home first so my mother doesn't worry, Duan Lingtian said. Subsequently, Ni Yuan once again personally sent Duan Lingtian out of the Divine Might Marquis estate, causing that rash soldier that guarded the gate to feel a lingering fear within his heart. Luckily, he hadn't offended that violet-clothed youth earlier, otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. At dawn the next day, Duan Lingtian had only just arrived at the Paladin Academy gate when he couldn't help but frown. The restlessness of the two little pythons and his sensitive spiritual force told him that someone was watching him from the shadows. Humph! Duan Lingtian stopped his footsteps and glanced far off into the distance with a sneer on the corners of his mouth. He didn't pay any attention to who sent those people, but if they were to dare to appear before him, then he wouldn't mind making them become corpses. Outside of Paladin Academy, in a remote alley, 2 ramrod-straight figures stood there. He seems to have noticed us. The thin-figured middle-aged man among them had a face full of surprise. Seems so. The other middle-aged man nodded. The thin man was silent for a moment before speaking. I heard he's only at the 9th level of the core formation stage. Logically speaking, it would be impossible for him to notice us. Maybe it's just a coincidence. The other man seemed unsure as he spoke. After Duan Lingtian walked into Paladin Academy, he noticed that the feeling of being watched had disappeared, so he walked into the classroom for classes as usual. The entire morning passed with Sima Chongfeng's long-winded statements. At noon during their meal, Duan Lingtian's group was slightly unaccustomed to the lack of Su Li, and they remained silent in tacit understanding. At dusk, after walking out of the Paladin Academy gates and saying his farewells to Xiao Yu and Xiao Xuan, Duan Lingtian once again felt someone watching him. Moreover, it wasn't just one person. Seems to be the 2 people from this morning, Duan Lingtian thought inwardly as he walked into a remote alley. In this alley, he had lured and killed 2 batches of people who wanted to kill him in succession. But this time, when he entered the alley and walked slowly, those 2 people didn't appear for a long time. Who the heck are they? Duan Lingtian frowned and lost his patience. Humph, since you aren't taking the initiative, then I'll reverse the positions. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused and his speed increased, then he vanished at the end of the alley in the blink of an eye. The 2 middle-aged men's figures appeared in the alley and swiftly moved forward, but they were unable to catch Duan Lingtian's trail. Although they were nascent soul martial artists, they weren't inscription masters, and thus their spiritual force wasn't so sensitive. Moreover, they didn't possess the tracking and counter-tracking abilities that Duan Lingtian developed from his previous lifetime as a mercenary and special forces member. We actually let him escape from under our noses. The thin-figured middle-aged man laughed bitterly. We can confirm that our feeling in the morning was correct and he indeed noticed us. The other middle-aged man had a serious expression. Is playing hide-and-seek fun? Right at this moment, a calm voice sounded from behind the 2 middle-aged men, causing their faces to turn extremely grim. 175 Chapter 176, 2 Great Brave Generals. The 2 middle-aged men felt their scalps go numb and sweated cold sweat out of fear as they slowly turned around. When they gazed upon the violet-clothed youth before them, their faces were filled with disbelief. This youth, when did he get behind them? They actually didn't notice it in the slightest. They both looked at each other and could see the shock within each other's eyes. While the 2 middle-aged men turned around, Duan Lingtian was sizing them up as well, and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Who sent you 2? Duan Lingtian asked in a calm voice as he stared fixedly at the 2 men. His dignified voice contained a sense of grimness. Whoosh! Instantly, a terrifying bloody intent swept out from Duan Lingtian's body and enveloped the two men without any restraint. The faces of the two men immediately went pale. It was difficult for them to imagine how a youth that seemed to be around the age of 18 would actually have such a terrifying killing intent. Instantly, an aura of slaughter arose from them as well, and it moved to counter Duan Lingtian's killing intent. Their two auras of slaughter gathered together, and only then did it barely stop Duan Lingtian's bloody killing intent. Duan Lingtian's brows knit as he felt the aura of the two men, and his ice-cold face eased up. Only then did the two men heave sighs of relief and showed faces full of lingering fear. Never in their dreams had they imagined that a little fellow at the 9th level of the core formation stage was actually able to bring such terrifying pressure to them. If it wasn't indeed a youth that stood before them, they would even think that this was a formidable man that had walked out from a terrifying battlefield. Go back and tell the Marquis that I appreciate his good intentions. Duan Lingtian walked past the two middle-aged men after he finished speaking and directly left. You know who we are. The two middle-aged men were slightly surprised. Such a strong aura of slaughter forms on the battlefield. Besides army officers who are veterans in battle, how many other people could possess it? Under the focused gazes of the two middle-aged men, Duan Lingtian's figure slowly disappeared into the distance, but the words that Duan Lingtian left behind, however, made both their faces flush. Veterans in battle. Before that youth, they really felt ashamed to proclaim themselves as officers who were veterans in battle. Looks like the general has still underestimated this nephew of his. The thin, middle-aged man shook his head with a bitter smile on his face. Since it's come to this, then let's return. Moreover, not mentioning anything else, with just this ability of his, there's only a handful of people in the Su clan who can do anything to him. The other middle-aged man had bitterness within the corners of his mouth as he slowly spoke. Divine Might Marquis Estate. Looking at his two favorite generals who stood before him with faces full of dejection and in low spirits, Divine Might Marquis Niyuan's face was full of astonishment. Didn't I ask you two to protect that nephew of mine in secret? Why have you two returned? General, don't joke with us. It's better if you get that nephew of yours to protect us. The thin middle-aged man shook his head. He felt a lingering fear in his heart when he recalled the scene from before. Until now, he still couldn't wrap their heads around how exactly that violet-clothed youth with a cultivation at the 9th level of the core formation stage could arrive behind them without them noticing in the slightest. He could imagine how if the violet-clothed youth was substituted with an enemy that matched his strength, he would undoubtedly die. Even though the other middle-aged man didn't speak, he nodded in deep agreement. What do you mean by this? Niyuan frowned with a puzzled expression. The two people before him were both his trusted generals that had swept through all opposition on the battlefield, and they could only be compared to a few people. But now, these two men seemed depressed and listless. It was difficult for him to imagine what exactly happened that would cause his two favorite generals to become like this. Eventually, under the narration of the two men, Niyuan found out the ins and outs of the matter. He noticed the tracks of you two at the first possible moment. Dodged past your tracking, and when you both were unaware in the slightest, he slipped behind you two. Niyuan had a face full of disbelief. Although he knew that this nephew of his was mysterious, never had he imagined it would be to such an extent. Ru Feng, what sort of little freak did you give life to? The corners of Niyuan's mouth twitched, and his eyes flashed with the traces of a jealous and envious brilliance. The youth being able to cultivate to the 9th level of the core formation stage at the age of 18 and even becoming a grade 9 alchemist had already caused him to be surprised. But never had he imagined that besides all this, the youth still had such a terrifying ability. Ordinary people might think nothing of the youth's ability in tracking and counter-tracking, but as a figure akin to a god of war in the Crimson Sky Kingdom, a man who'd walked out of the battlefield, he was able to deeply perceive how terrifying such an ability was. If he had such an ability, it would also mean that sneaking into the enemy's camp would be like walking into a deserted place. Even if it was assassinating the enemy camp's Grand General, it wouldn't be a difficult task. The appointed day arrived 3 days later as scheduled. Duan Lingtian once again arrived at the Divine Might Marquis estate. Within the audience hall, the Divine Might Marquis Niyuan passed over the stack of information in his hand to Duan Lingtian. Little Tian, these are the things you wanted. Thank you, Uncle Ni. If there's nothing else, then all. After getting the things he needed, Duan Lingtian was prepared to leave. However, would Niyuan let him leave? Wait, Ni Yuan looked at Duan Ling Tian and his eyes narrowed before he lightly smiled. Little Tian, I think we should chat. Chat about what? Duan Ling Tian had a face full of vigilance, because he noticed that Ni Yuan had a fox-like smile on his face. 2 days ago, didn't you manage to slip behind my 2 favorite generals without them noticing it in the slightest? Ni Yuan looked at Duan Ling Tian with a burning gaze. Uncle Ni, you want to chat about this? Duan Ling Tian came to an understanding. He thought it would be something important. I've thought about it, and if this ability of yours is able to be widely utilized within the army, I would surely be able to construct an extremely successful team. I would be able to go deep into the enemy army as if it was a deserted place and take the head of the enemy's commander as if it taking it out of my pocket. When Ni Yuan spoke about armies going to war, his body unconsciously emitted an iron-blooded aura of slaughter. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be surprised. As expected of the Crimson Sky Kingdom's god of war, just this aura of slaughter far surpassed that of the 2 men he encountered 2 days ago. Uncle Ni, you want me to pass on this ability to you? Duan Ling Tian guessed Ni Yuan's intentions. Exactly. Ni Yuan's eyes shone as he nodded. If you're willing, Uncle Ni can agree to any of your requests. Duan Ling Tian rolled his eyes at Ni Yuan. Uncle Ni, I removed the poison from Grandfather Ni, so you seem to still owe me a great favor, right? Ni Yuan laughed embarrassedly and rubbed his fists together. He was truly interested in that ability of Duan Ling Tian's. Uncle Ni. Duan Ling Tian looked at Ni Yuan with a serious expression. That ability of mine, if you want to learn it, it can't be said to be difficult nor not difficult, neither can it be said to be easy or not easy, but it isn't something that can be learned in a short amount of time. I naturally understand this. Just like how when armies go to battle, it requires experiences accumulated over a long period in order to become an army that's won 1,000 battles. Ni Yuan nodded, as he didn't feel this to be strange at all. Since it's like this, then send 2 people to me, Uncle Ni. I think the 2 men you sent to protect me the other time aren't bad. Ask them to follow me for a period of time and I'll surely be able to let them completely grasp this ability of mine. The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled at an angle as he slowly spoke. Your appetite is really big, kid. Do you know that they're both top generals under my command? Ni Yuan derided. However, they probably wouldn't refuse if I asked them to follow you and learn. Just as Ni Yuan said that, the gazes of the 2 men that Ni Yuan had sent to protect Duan Ling Tian in secret shone brightly. The moment they heard that Duan Ling Tian was going to teach them that mysterious ability of tracking and counter-tracking, even their breathing became hurried. They had experienced Duan Ling Tian's ability and were able to estimate how much they would benefit once they mastered that ability. Ni Yuan's gaze focused as he glanced at Duan Ling Tian and asked, Little Tian, how long would they need to learn for? What? Uncle Ni's unwilling to part with them. Don't worry, I'll need a year's time at most. After a year, even if they're unable to reach the level I'm at, they will surely be able to master the key points. At that point, they will only need more practice before catching up to me sooner or later. Duan Ling Tian smiled as he said this with a face full of confidence. 1 year, that isn't too long. Ni Yuan's brows knitted as he nodded. However, Duan Ling Tian looked at Ni Yuan and hesitated to speak. What other request do you have? Ni Yuan asked. Uncle Ni, during this year, I hope that they can completely become my people and only listen to my orders. Anyone else, including you, has no right to order them. I require complete control over them. Duan Ling Tian proclaimed his request. If you're unable to do this, then everything we've spoken about earlier can be considered to be cancelled. Ni Yuan lightly frowned, but he eased up before long and shook his head. Never mind, it's up to you. I presume you probably have a sense of limit when you do things. The current Ni Yuan, however, didn't know that this decision of his would become the decision he regretted the most in his entire lifetime. In the days that were to come, he would realize that there was no concept of limits within this nephew of his. Duan Ling Tian laughed. Deal. Duan Ling Tian looked at the 2 middle-aged men as he asked, What are your names? The thin and tall middle-aged man didn't dare hesitate. Young Master Ling Tian, I'm Zhang Qian. The other man of middle stature respectfully said, Young Master Ling Tian, I'm Zhao Gang. In the future, you 2 can directly call me Young Master, Duan Ling Tian said indifferently. Yes, Young Master. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang hurriedly replied with extreme respect. Although the cultivation of the youth before them was nothing in their eyes, the youth's abilities in other areas caused them to have heartfelt admiration. Uncle Ni, I'll be taking them and leaving. Although it was only for a year, obtaining 2 brave generals at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage for nothing still caused Duan Lingtian to be extremely delighted. This time, Ni Yuan didn't escort Duan Lingtian out. He was really worried he would regret it. He had a feeling that this nephew of his was no ordinary person. I hope he doesn't cause any trouble. A bitter smile appeared on Ni Yuan's face. 176 Chapter 177, Got Mixed Up in Trouble. After walking out of the Divine Might Marquis estate, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang. Are you two married? The two of them nodded, and a smile of warmth and happiness appeared on their faces, as they had obviously thought about their wives. Duan Lingtian found out from them that their families lived within the Divine Might Marquis estate. After bringing the two home, Duan Lingtian summoned his manager, Jing Ru. Jing Ru, ask the servant girls to clean up 2 rooms for them. Yes, young master. After Jing Ru left, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang with a serious expression. Besides me, you two, and the people that live here, I hope that no one, not even the Divine Might Marquis, finds out about the location of this house, do you understand? Yes, young master. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang were both army officers and understood the weight of an order. As far as they were concerned, from today onwards, Duan Lingtian was their general for the next year. In the future, you two will stay here for 3 days, then return to the Divine Might Marquis estate for a day. Besides that, when I'm at Paladin Academy, you two can return to accompany your families and then come wait for me outside Paladin Academy at dusk. Duan Lingtian ordered continuously. Thank you, young master. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang had already been prepared to be separated from their families for a year, but never had they expected that Duan Lingtian would be so reasonable and understanding. Their hearts were filled with gratitude. Before long, Jing Ru had finished getting the servant girls to clean up the 2 rooms, and after Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang returned to their rooms, Duan Lingtian arrived at the rear courtyard. Scoundrel, who are those 2 people you brought back? Li Fei asked curiously. They're people I borrowed from Uncle Ni. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. Li Fei nodded and didn't inquire any further, as she was clear in her heart that whatever that man did, he had his own reasons. After a while, Duan Lingtian greeted the 3 women before returning to his room. He withdrew the stack of information he received from the Divine Might Marquis Ni Yuan. This was information on the Su clan's businesses within the Imperial City, as well as the information of the people in charge of those businesses. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be astounded after he casually skimmed over the information. As expected of one of the 3 great clans of the Imperial City. Their clan's businesses are practically spread throughout all of the Imperial City's inner city and outer city, inns, weapon stores, medicine stores, restaurants, everything that one could wish for is one of their businesses. Besides that, all of these people in charge are actually at the nascent soul stage. Before long, Duan Lingtian's gaze descended upon one of the pages of information. Su Lai, 3rd level of the nascent soul stage, the nephew of the Su clan's grand elder Su Nan. He manages the Su clan's brilliant excitement inn. He's fond of women, his greatest addiction is to forcefully take female commoners, and he once killed a family of 7 for a female commoner. As he read up to this point, Duan Lingtian's gaze focused and a cold light flashed within, and he sneered. Sure enough, like uncle like nephew, it'll be you. After putting away the stack of information into his spatial ring, Duan Lingtian walked out of his room and arrived at the front courtyard. Duan Lingtian summoned Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang before bringing them along and leaving the house. Presently, it was already deep into the night, and there was no one to be seen on the road. With Duan Lingtian at the lead, the 3 of them quickly arrived outside an inn. Young master, what are you here for? Zhang Qian was slightly bewildered. To kill someone. Duan Lingtian's gaze focused as a coldness appeared within his eyes. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang shuddered and exhaled breaths of cold air. It was probably only this youth who could speak of killing someone so casually. Although they had killed many people on the battlefield, that was the battlefield, whereas this was the Imperial City, and thus the meaning was completely different. This seems to be a business of the Su clan. Zhang Qian's pupils constricted. Let's go. Duan Lingtian brought along the 2 of them as he followed along the inn's walls to sneak into the inn's roof. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang obediently followed behind him. After a while of searching, Duan Lingtian eventually confirmed the location of the target and snuck onto the roof above the target's room. Don't, no, I beg you, don't. The sound of a woman begging for help sounded from within the room. Duan Lingtian silently lifted open a piece of tile and clearly saw the scene within the room. A fatty with an extremely large belly was forcing himself onto a woman with slightly good looks and wore plain clothes. The woman obviously was unwilling and she desperately struggled. Bad luck. Instantly, the fatty lost all patience and he kicked out, directly kicking the woman flying. She collided with the wall and completely lost all signs of life. This scene was something that Duan Lingtian's group of 3 had never expected. Even though Duan Lingtian was furious, he still held his breath and had a gloomy expression. Bastard. However, the 2 honorable and staunch men who had experienced battlefields were angered to the point that they shouted in low voices and their faces went gloomy. Who? The fatty within the room perceived the sound and his face went pale. The instant he lifted his head to look, he noticed that a tile on the roof above him had been lifted away by someone. You two, really are. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he glanced at Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang helplessly. Looks like the first lesson I'll be giving you is how to control your emotions. Alright, now that he's been startled by you two, I'll leave it to you two to deal with him. Duan Lingtian spread out his hand to express his helplessness when he finished speaking. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang had long since been waiting for Duan Lingtian to say this, and the moment Duan Lingtian finished speaking, their legs trembled as they directly stepped through the roof and flashed inside. Duan Lingtian followed them inside as well. Where do you thieves come from? Do you actually dare to make this young master your target? Didn't you even find out who this young master is? The fatty with an extremely large belly and a bare upper body, or in other words, the Su clan's grand elder's nephew, Su Lai, had a disdainful expression as he looked at Duan Lingtian's group of 3. However, since you've come, then stay. The fat on Su Lai's body trembled as 400 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above him, revealing a strength at the 3rd level of the nascent soul stage before pouncing towards Duan Lingtian's group of 3. Bang, 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 the fatty's palm descended. It vibrated in the air 3 times, transforming into 3 palm prints that flashed towards Duan Lingtian's group of 3. Humph. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang had only just moved when 1,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared above each of them. 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out with an imposing manner that pierced through the sky. 2 7th-level nascent soul martial artists. Su Li was dumbfounded. He originally thought that they were only 3 little thieves, but never had he imagined that there would be 2 7th-level nascent soul martial artists. His expression went completely pale. Who the heck are you? Su Li shouted fiercely in a questioning tone. But unfortunately, what he received in return was Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang's attacks that were filled with rage. After easily shattering Su Lai's palm prints, Zhang Qian's and Zhao Gang's attacks were like a tempest as they descended onto Su Lai's body. Instantly, Su Li's fat figure distorted in shape and lost all signs of life. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian walked over unhurried and removed the spatial ring on Su Lai's hand before establishing ownership of it. When he saw the large pile of silver bills and silver ingots within the spatial ring, Duan Lingtian's eyes shone as he muttered to himself, these silver bills and silver ingots in total are at least 7 or 8 million silver, not bad. 7 or 8 million silver. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang were stunned. Young master, who is this fatty? Zhang Qian fiercely gulped down a mouthful of saliva as a bad premonition arose within his heart. You don't know who he is, but you still rushed over, gave him a beating, and killed him. Duan Lingtian was slightly speechless. Never mind, if he's dead then he's dead. My target this time was originally him. This person is called Su Lai. He seems to be the manager of this inn. His other identity is a direct descendant of the Su clan, and he is also the nephew of the Su clan's grand elder, Su Nan. Duan Lingtian shrugged and finished speaking within a breath. Zhang Qian's and Zhao Gang's expressions completely went pale, the Su clan's direct descendant. Oh my god, even the Divine Might Marquis wouldn't dare to brazenly get rid of a Su clan direct descendant like this, right? What, you two think he didn't deserve death? Duan Lingtian noticed that both of them had strange expressions on their faces. It seemed like the two of them had charged forward very fiercely earlier, right? Manager, has something happened? Right at this moment, a clamorous noise sounded from outside the room and was moving closer. If you don't want to be noticed, then hurry up and leave. Duan Lingtian swept Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian with his gaze before being the first to step on the room to gain momentum and jumping up the hole in the room. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang didn't dare ponder any longer, they hurriedly followed Duan Lingtian. If they were to let the Su clan know that it was them who had killed Su Lai, even the Divine Might Marquis would be unable to protect them. This was a Su clan direct descendant. Large families like the Su clan regarded the face of the clan as most important, and killing their direct descendants was no different than slapping them on the face. After leaving the inn and passing by a few roads, only then did Duan Lingtian slow down his speed. How was it? Satisfying, right? Duan Lingtian looked at the two of them and grinned. It's satisfying, yes, however, that was a Su clan direct descendant. If the Su clan finds out that it was us, we'll be finished. Zhang Qian had a bitter smile on his face. He even felt slight regretful for following this youth and leaving the Divine Might Marquis estate. He hadn't even learned any skills but had attracted a terrible disaster like this. Although Zhao Gang didn't say anything, his current expression obviously showed that he had the same thoughts as Zhang Qian. You said, if they find out it was us, so isn't it fine if we don't let them find out? Duan Lingtian was slightly speechless. Didn't this fellow's brain know about thinking from a different angle? Whoosh! Duan Lingtian raised his hand and withdrew 2 stacks of silver. Before passing them over to Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang. Tonight's gains aren't bad, this is for you too, 1,000,000 silver each. 1,000,000 silver? Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian both shuddered and were completely dumbstruck. They were 7th level nascent soul martial artists and had no one above them but the general, but their entire accumulated wealth from the army for nearly half of their lives was only a few 100,000 silver in total. Now they had only just killed a damn fatty that raised indignation within the commoners, and they were able to obtain so much money. They both wondered if they were dreaming. However, the two of them didn't take the silver that Duan Lingtian passed to them. Young master, we can't take this money. Disregarding the two men's refusal, Duan Lingtian forcefully pushed the silver into their hands before casually saying, "Don't be fussy, hurry up and take it, tonight is only the beginning. In the future, as long as you follow this young master, I guarantee you can earn a huge sum. Tonight is only the beginning." Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang felt like weeping but had no tears, and they both felt like they had gotten mixed up in trouble. 177. Chapter 178. Invincible under the Origin Core stage. Put away the silver and let's go home. If you two don't want to die, then you better not let a 4th person know of what happened tonight, including the Divine Might Marquis and your family members. Duan Lingtian took a large stride forward and walked towards his own house. Yes, young master. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang put away the silver before following Duan Lingtian. What a joke. If tonight's matter were to be known by another, they'd be unable to avoid being implicated as well. Even though they had done many deeds of valor in battle, even though they were the trusted followers of the Divine Might Marquis, the Su clan wouldn't care about all that. At that time, even the Divine Might Marquis might not be able to protect them. When Duan Lingtian had only just returned to his house with Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang and they had all returned to their rooms to sleep. The Su clan was completely filled with loud sounds of discussion. The Su clan had many businesses under them, and they were even involved in inns. However, the Brilliant Excitement Inn under the Su clan had encountered disaster tonight. The manager of the Brilliant Excitement Inn, in other words the Su clan member that was in charge of the inn and was Grand Elder Su Nan's nephew, Su Lai, was killed in his own room. Slap. In the Su clan audience hall, Patriarch Su Boya had a face full of rage as his palm descended, and the armrest of the new seat that had just been changed was once again shattered by him, causing the hearts of the Su clan elders that were present to tremble. Looked like after today, the Patriarch would need another new seat. Who can tell me what exactly happened? Su Buyuya had a gloomy expression and was practically roaring. The bearing that a Patriarch of a clan was supposed to have was all gone, and all that remained was a frenzied rage. The Su clan had really been going through a troubled period lately. First, the most talented genius among the younger generation direct descendants, Su Tong, was crippled, then it was the loss of the recommendation quota to enter Paladin Academy, and now the Su clan's direct descendant disciple was actually so brazenly killed by someone. Patriarch, that nephew of mine died so tragically. We must find out who's the assailant and make him pay for blood with blood. Grand Elder Su Nan, who sat below Su Boya, had a face full of lament and resentment and was enraged to the extreme. One trouble had not even subsided and another had already arose. If it was before, there would surely be many people who would second what the Su Nan said. But now, Grand Elder, according to my knowledge, Su Lai frequently did some deeds like forcefully taking female commoners. When he was killed tonight, his room contained a woman that was killed by him for not obeying him. Could it be that he had committed too many bad deeds and encountered the revenge of a righteous expert? The old man that sat opposite of Su Nan spoke indifferently. His tone was calm but mixed within was a trace of pleasure at Su Nan's misfortune. I think what second elder said is reasonable. Grand Elder, you should have long since known of the despicable actions of that nephew of yours. Why didn't you try to advise him? Exactly, if Grand Elder had been able to provide proper guidance, that Sulai would have surely restrained himself and wouldn't have lost his life over this. The remaining Su clan elders one after the other seconded what second elder had said. Some of the Su clan elders even had sarcastic tones as they spoke. Since they found out that Grand Elder Su Nan's decision caused the Su clan to lose 2 recommendation slots to Paladin Academy, extreme displeasure arose within their hearts. The recommendation quota that was already fought for amongst the Su clan higher-ups was now even more difficult to obtain. And all of this was because of Grand Elder Su Nan. You all. Su Nan's face was extremely unsightly. He naturally knew why he would become the common target for criticism. Presently, all the statements these elders made were reasonable, causing him to not know how to refute them for a moment. Patriarch, even if that nephew of mine had any more fault, he's still a direct descendant of our Su clan. Could it be that we're going to let him die for nothing? Su Nan looked at Su Boya with a face full of fury. Humph, Su Boya grunted coldly. Killing a direct descendant of my Su clan is no different than slapping the face of my Su clan. Pass down my orders, investigate the identity of the assailant. If someone is able to provide a clue, reward them with 1,000,000 silver. Reward with 1,000,000 silver. At dawn the next day, Duan Lingtian had only just entered the classroom when he heard some of the students in his class discussing what happened in the Su clan last night. The Su clan is really stingy. The life of a direct descendant disciple is only worth 1,000,000 silver in their eyes. Duan Lingtian had a strange expression, but he felt extremely happy in his heart. Before long, a trace of ice coldness appeared within Duan Lingtian's eyes. Su Nan, last night's incident is only just the beginning. Since you want to play, then I'll accompany your Su clan and nicely play. Su Nan, the Su clan's grand elder, and the culprit that forced Su Li to leave. In the afternoon that day, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged on the large tree at the side of the martial arts practice grounds and cultivated as usual. Bang! The bottleneck that he originally thought would still require some time to break through was instantly broken through under Duan Lingtian's concentrated and devoted cultivating. And his cultivation officially stepped into the 6th level of the core formation stage. I broke through. Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, and was slightly surprised for a brief moment. How could it be so fast? Duan Lingtian, however, didn't know that the cultivation of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique walked upon the path of being domineering and following the heart. This time, because of Su Li's departure, an extremely large change occurred in Duan Lingtian's mentality, and he seemed to have once again become that iron-blooded weapons specialist from his previous lifetime that stopped at nothing. As long as someone bullied his friends, brothers, or family, he would surely return it tenfold, hundredfold, even thousandfold and 10,000-fold. This sort of mentality happened to fully conform with the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique's requirement of being domineering and following the heart. It allowed Duan Lingtian's cultivation to advance at a tremendous pace and at full speed, directly breaking through the 5th level core formation stage bottleneck and stepping into the 6th level of the core formation stage in one go. As long as Duan Lingtian continued to maintain this mentality, the cultivation speed of his 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique in the future would surely be able to maintain this tremendous pace at which it advances. The 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique was a cultivation method that was on par with the Supreme Cultivation Method 3 Lives Rebirth technique that the Rebirth Martial Emperor cultivated, after all, and surpassed top cultivation methods at the same level as the Frost God's Sword technique, the Demonic Beauty Divine technique, and the Galactic Star technique. After breaking through to the 6th level of the core formation stage, Duan Lingtian was extremely delighted. After I get home tonight, I'll refine a dragon blood pill and directly let my fleshly body complete its tempering with origin energy. After that, I can continue to charge towards the 7th level of the core formation stage. Duan Lingtian was slightly excited in his heart. Once he completed the tempering of the fleshly body for the 6th level of the core formation stage, he would be capable of exerting the strength of 16 ancient mammoths even without the use of his spirit weapon, the Violet Myrtle Flexible Sword. As a Grade 8 spirit weapon, the Violet Myrtle Flexible Sword was capable of increasing his strength by 20%. At that time, if he were to use the Violet Myrtle Flexible Sword, he would be capable of exerting the strength of 19 ancient mammoths. An ordinary martial artist at the 9th level of the core formation stage would only possess the strength of 12 ancient mammoths and would be unable to exert the strength of 19 ancient mammoths unless the martial artist had a grade 4 spirit weapon to rely on. However, not to mention the Crimson Sky Kingdom, even the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, who had sects sprout up like forests and the number of experts within were like the clouds in the sky, might not have a grade 4 spirit weapon. It could be said that after tonight, even if it was throughout the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom and even throughout the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Duan Lingtian could still be called invincible under the Origin Core stage. At dusk, after Duan Lingtian left Paladin Academy, his brows slightly raised. Interesting. A cold smile that was difficult to notice appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. He noticed that among the people that were hidden in the shadows and focused on him, besides Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang, who were under him, there were still 3 more people. Hey, are all the people in this world so unprofessional when they resort to tracking someone? Duan Lingtian shrugged and walked into an alley in the distance with extreme familiarity. He had only just entered the alley for a short moment when 3 figures seemed to transform into 3 gusts of wind as they flashed straight towards Duan Lingtian, and they divided themselves into 3 corners as they surrounded Duan Lingtian. They were 3 middle-aged men who had frosty expressions that contained no emotions whatsoever, and their icy cold eyes stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian as if they were looking at a dead man. Could it be that your liege thinks that just the 3 of you are enough to take my life? A sneer appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth, as he vaguely perceived that the cultivation levels of these 3 people were at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage to the 3rd level of the nascent soul stage. They were even inferior to that fatty Su Lai from the brilliant excitement in last night. Target confirmed, kill. One of the middle-aged men spoke with an incomparably icy cold voice, and as soon as he finished speaking, his entire body moved and he pounced towards Duan Lingtian. The other 2 middle-aged men followed suit. 300 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared above the middle-aged man that spoke. He was obviously a 2nd-level nascent soul martial artist. The other 2 people were both at the 1st level of the nascent soul stage. Faced with the joint attack of the 3 middle-aged men, Duan Lingtian didn't have any intention of dodging, even to the extent that he didn't allow the 2 little pythons beneath his sleeve to attack. At practically the same instant that the 3 men pounced towards Duan Lingtian. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures whose speeds were numerous times faster than the 3 men seemed to transform into 2 bolts of lightning as they instantly flashed into the battle. They stood beside Duan Lingtian and protected him. Above the 2 men, there were each 1,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that dashed out. 7th level of the nascent soul stage. The 3 middle-aged men's expressions went grim. Bad intel, retreat. The body of the 2nd-level nascent soul martial artist trembled in the air. His leg stepped onto the ground, desiring to obtain the momentum to flee. The other 2 men hurriedly stopped their attacks as well and split into 3 directions as they fled. Humph! A cold grunt accompanied by a figure that moved like a bolt of lightning instantly passed the 2nd-level nascent soul martial artist. The other figure that moved like a bolt of lightning caught up to the other 2 1st-level nascent soul martial artists as well. Leave them alone. Duan Lingtian's gaze slightly focused as he ordered. He wanted to know who exactly sent these 3 people were. No matter who it was that sent them, he would make that person pay the price. After a short moment, Zhang Qian's palm slapped downwards to heavily injure that 2nd-level nascent soul martial artist, and like an eagle that caught a chick, Zhang Qian carried him over to Duan Lingtian. On the other side, Zhao Gang killed one of the 1st-level nascent soul stage martial artists before capturing the other. As long as you tell me who sent you, I can let you live. Duan Lingtian slowly walked out. His gaze descended upon the 2 middle-aged men with ghastly pale expressions as he spoke with a cold and indifferent voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's face went grim. The scene that would only appear within wuxia novels from his previous life appeared before his eyes. The 2 middle-aged men cracked their teeth. They had obviously bitten some sort of poisonous medicine into pieces before directly dying from poisoning. 178 Chapter 179, Huge Business Deal. After seeing the 2 middle-aged men's faces turn black, losing vitality from the poison, and dying from suicide, Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian glanced at each other before their faces went grim. Death soldiers. Death soldiers. What death soldiers? Duan Lingtian's brows frowned. He didn't understand why Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian would have such a huge reaction. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang glanced at Duan Lingtian and felt their scalps go numb. Who the heck did this young master offend? Zhang Qian took a deep breath and slowly explained, "Young master, the so-called death soldiers are a group of pawns that are fearless of death and were trained by people who have great plans and schemes. These death soldiers are only loyal to their liege and only serve one liege with their lives. As long as their liege wishes it, they are willing to give up everything, including their lives, for their liege. During the process of carrying out a mission, once the mission fails, these death soldiers would rather die than spit out the identity of their liege." After Zhang Qian finished speaking, he and Zhao Gang looked at Duan Lingtian together. They were both curious as to how this young master offended the person behind these death soldiers. "So these are death soldiers?" Duan Lingtian nodded, and a trace of coldness arose within his heart. For the sake of completing the mission, they were fearless of death. These people were virtually machines of slaughter that were deprived of any human feelings. "Young master, have you offended someone?" Zhao Gang asked in a slightly hesitant manner. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he directly said, "I've offended many people. Don't you both know of the Su clan?" "Young master, logically speaking, it's impossible that these death soldiers are people from the Su clan." Zhang Qian shook his head. "According to my knowledge, these death soldiers usually come from the army. Only people who possess high statuses would secretly gather these people and form a death corps under their command. At the critical juncture, these death corps would be able to transform into sharp blades that directly enter the chests of their enemies." "Then who do you think these death soldiers most probably belong to?" Duan Lingtian frowned lightly as he asked. "Young master, within the imperial city, these death soldiers are more commonly seen under the command of the various princes of the imperial family. As long as they are princes who have the intention to compete for the seat of the emperor, then basically all of them without exception have trained a group of death soldiers under their command," Zhao Gang said, with a serious expression, and his eyes couldn't help but emit a trace of suspicion within his eyes. Could it be that the young master had a grudge with someone that has a lofty status? "Prince." Duan Lingtian's eyes focused and a cold light flashed within. He didn't have to ponder before being able to guess that the three death soldiers that had just appeared to assassinate him were either the third prince's people or the fifth prince's people. "Third prince, fifth prince, no matter who did this, I hope you two don't go too far. Otherwise, not to mention that the seat of the emperor will not be fated for you two, even your lives will be difficult to maintain." Duan Lingtian's face sank as killing intent arose within his heart. "Let's go home." Duan Lingtian called Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian before directly walking towards his house. On the way, Duan Lingtian didn't forget to teach a lesson to the two of them. "When the two of you secretly follow me in the future, can you be a little bit more professional? I'd only just walked out of Paladin Academy and I'd noticed the tracks of you two." As Duan Lingtian taught them a lesson, he also slowly imbued the practical knowledge of tracking he learned from his previous life as a weapons specialist into the two of them. When had Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang ever heard of such fresh things? They listened so well that they seemed like they were infatuated and intoxicated with what Duan Lingtian taught them. Never had they imagined that merely tracking would actually have so much to pay attention to. The gazes with which the two of them looked at Duan Lingtian was even more respectful. And at the same time, they couldn't help but be curious inwardly. Where the heck did this youth actually learn all these things? "You two, take a rest and prepare. This young master will take you two out to conduct a huge business deal tonight," Duan Lingtian said to Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang after they returned home. He then walked into the main building by himself and returned to his room. "Huge business deal." Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang glanced at each other and both saw bitter smiles on each other's faces. They naturally knew what this huge business deal the young master spoke of was, however, did they have any room to choose now? Precisely as the saying goes, make one wrong move, and every move after that will be wrong. The two of them helplessly shook their heads before obediently returning to their rooms to rest. As for Duan Lingtian, after he returned, he didn't even have the time to greet the three beauties within his house before directly returning to his room. Whoosh! He withdrew the cauldron and subsequently started refining the dragon blood pill. After the dragon blood pill was completed, Duan Lingtian consumed it. Instantly, his fleshly body completed the tempering for the 6th level of the nascent soul stage and gained an extra strength of one ancient mammoth. This would also mean that his next step would be to directly charge towards the 7th level of the core formation stage. "I've finally nearly caught up to those two girls." A smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. Since they had settled down in the imperial city's inner city, no matter whether it was Kair or Li Fei, they both spent over 10 hours a day cultivating under the assistance of an inexhaustible supply of high-purity origin-increasing pills. Presently, the two girls had already broken through to the 7th level of the core formation stage in succession. But Duan Lingtian was confident that with his current cultivation speed, it wouldn't be long from now before he'd catch up to the two girls' footsteps. "Young master, it's time for food." A voice that was pleasing to the ear sounded from outside. Duan Lingtian opened the door and saw Kair there. Duan Lingtian was in a slight trance when he saw the slim and graceful young girl. The current Kair wasn't the little girl from before, she had already matured. Looking at Kair's beautiful face that was as white as jade, and the pair of plump buds before her chest, Duan Lingtian's lower regions went hot as evil intentions arose within his heart. Maybe he should find a time to eat up this girl Kair. "Young master, I'm leaving first. You hurry up and come eat as well." Kair had noticed Duan Lingtian's gaze and her heartbeat increased in speed. Her face blushed as she quickly walked out. This little girl is still shy. Duan Lingtian shook his head and chased after her. After finishing their meal, Duan Lingtian returned to his room and withdrew the information of the various businesses under the Su clan and the people in charge of those businesses before starting to look through it. In the end, he locked in a target. Su Yang, 6th level nascent soul martial artist, cousin of the Su clan's grand elder, Su Nan, and manages the Su clan's largest medicine store within the imperial city, Calmed Clouds Pavilion. He has 2 children that commit all sorts of atrocities, and every time it was Su Yang who cleaned up after their mess by ruthlessly annihilating any threats. After he finished looking through Su Yang's information, Duan Lingtian decided on him. The main reason why he chose Su Yang was naturally because of his relationship with Su Nan. The second reason was due to his despicable actions. Besides having 2 ignorant and incompetent children that were profligate sons, he himself was stained with despicable deeds. Like the old saying, like father like son. In this world where the strong are revered, it's like this: there is absolutely no law to be spoken of, and the fist is the absolute principle. Just like this Su Yang, it can be said that everyone within the imperial city knows of the actions of Su Yang and his 2 sons. However, even the imperial family that controls the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom pretends that they don't notice for the sake of the Su clan's face, and thus don't punish Su Yang and his sons. Although Duan Lingtian didn't plan on being some sort of savior, since he had decided to give the Su clan a taste of his strength, he naturally wouldn't show mercy. Blame yourself for being misfortunate. If it wasn't for your Su clan going overboard, I wouldn't have targeted you. Duan Lingtian finished looking through the other information of Su Yang before leaving his room. Deep into the night, when it was so dark that one was unable to see their own hand in front of them. At the northern area of the imperial city's inner city was a residential area, and one of the courtyard houses amongst them was extremely spacious. Within the courtyard house, the lights were out, as the person inside had obviously fallen asleep. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 figures were like owls as they passed the courtyard house's enclosing wall before sneaking into the courtyard house. Let's go. Under the shine of moonlight, the figure of the person in the lead appeared, and it was a youth wearing black clothes and had his face covered. It was precisely Duan Lingtian. His target tonight was the Su clan's Su Yang. This Su Yang didn't stay within the Su clan estate. Instead, he bought a courtyard house outside of the Su clan estate by himself and kept a few mistresses. He passed his days extremely comfortably. Under Duan Lingtian's lead, Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian, who similarly wore black clothes and covered their faces, silently followed behind him. Through the moonlight, the helplessness within their eyes could be seen. When had they ever been so sneaky? Young master, from what I know, that Su Yang is only at the 6th level of the nascent soul stage. Can't we be straightforward and directly charge in to kill him? Zhang Qian asked. Although Zhao Gang didn't speak, he still nodded in deep agreement. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. Why did he feel that these 2 fellows were even more savage than him? Straightforward. Duan Lingtian sneered in a low voice. If we directly charge in, then what would be the difference of having me here? Don't forget what your general asked you to follow me for. Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian came to a sudden understanding. So the young master was training them. Unless something happens, kill Su Yang only. Duan Lingtian brought Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang to enter the main building and arrived outside the innermost master bedroom. Duan Lingtian pushed out his palm and shook open the door's lock. Bang! The room door was pushed open by Duan Lingtian. Who? Instantly, an explosive shout sounded from within the room, and subsequently a light was lit within the room. The entire room was completely illuminated. The middle-aged man that was originally completely naked shrouded himself with a robe at the front of the bed before jumping down from the bed and opening his pair of fierce triangular eyes widely to stare fixedly at Duan Lingtian's group of three, who wore black clothes and had their faces covered. He said, with a gloomy expression, "Who are you all?" "Ah," a young girl that looked to be around the age of 20 cowered at the corner of the bed in fear. She pulled over the sheets to cover her buck-naked body. "Kill him." Duan Lingtian's eyes focused as he shouted in a low voice with his command. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang moved to directly flash towards the middle-aged man. They had an imposing manner that pierced through the sky. 1,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared above each of them. 2 7th-level nascent soul martial artists. The middle-aged man's, or in other words, Su Yong's, face went deathly pale, as he realized that these people didn't come with good intentions. His gaze quickly descended upon the nearby window, and his body moved before breaking the window with a loud crash and going out. Above him, 800 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang's pupils constricted as they pursued. "No, don't kill me." When she saw Duan Lingtian approaching, the expression of the young girl who cowered at the corner of the bed went pale, and her eyes emitted terror. 179. Chapter 180. A Storm Rages. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian heard a wave of clamorous noise sounding from outside the front courtyard. He knew that the events here had alarmed the other people. Under the girl's frightened gaze, Duan Lingtian's brows knitted before he raised his hand and knocked the girl out, only then did he chase out of the window. In any case, his face was currently covered, and thus he wasn't worried about being recognized. Outside the window was the rear courtyard of this courtyard house, and currently that Su Yong was leaning against the rear courtyard's wall, unmoving and without a trace of life. Obviously he didn't succeed in his escape. Think about it, how could a 6th-level nascent soul martial artist succeed in fleeing under the joint chase of 2 7th-level nascent soul martial artists? Meanwhile, Zhang Qian removed Su Yong's spatial ring and respectfully passed it into Duan Lingtian's hand. "Young master. Let's go." When Duan Lingtian's group of three arrived before the wall, they exerted force with their legs and their origin energy rose explosively. Above their heads, 10+ ancient mammoth silhouettes flashed. They directly jumped over the enclosing wall and arrived outside the courtyard house. When Duan Lingtian had only just left with Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang, he could vaguely hear a sorrowful cry echo out from within the rear courtyard. "Master." On the way, Duan Lingtian established ownership over the spatial ring, and the wealth within caused his eyes to shine. 30+ million silver, it was just as he'd expected. This Su Yong had worked most of his life, and his accumulated wealth would far surpass that fatty, Su Lai's, from last night. In fact, Su Lai could be considered a nephew of Su Yong. This pair of uncle and nephew in total had gifted him nearly 40 million silver. "Take it." Duan Lingtian once again withdrew 2 million silver and divided it among Zhang Qian and Zhao Gang. The two of them didn't refuse this time and directly put it away. As far as they were concerned, now that they were following and did things for this audacious young master, they practically had a slim chance of survival. If one day they were to accidentally fail, then they could at least leave this wealth to their wives. With the Divine Might Marquis present, they didn't have to worry about their wives being implicated. It could be said that they were already prepared for the worst. After all, what they were doing now was like walking on a steel wire atop a cliff, and they would fall down at the slightest accident, resulting in their bodies being smashed into pieces. The Su clan weren't easy to deal with. If Duan Lingtian knew the thoughts of Zhao Gang and Zhang Qian, he would surely be speechless for a while. He had done similar things countless times in his previous life, and besides the time he was sold out by someone, when did he ever fail? When they returned to the house, Duan Lingtian, whose mood was already elated, greeted another unexpected reason for being happy. Shang Quan had actually spent all the 50 million silver he was given last time and had once again gathered the materials that were sufficient to inscribe over 10 bone corrosion inscriptions. After today, the Su clan will surely be vigilant. I'll rest for a few days and help Mom and those two girls by inscribing some bone corrosion inscriptions for the next few nights. Duan Lingtian thought inwardly and made a plan. To him, there was nothing more important than the safety of his family. Duan Lingtian, whose mood was elated, sneakily entered Li Fei's room. Li Fei wasn't asleep yet. She was sitting cross-legged on the soft bed as she cultivated Her eyes opened the moment she heard movement, and she saw Duan Lingtian with a glance. She didn't even have the time to react when she was pushed down onto the bed by Duan Lingtian. "Little Fei, your husband has come." Before long, accompanied by Duan Lingtian's heavy breathing, the soft bed started swaying, writing down an extravagant score of music. Until deep into the night, only then did the movement of the two cease, and the sound of panting suffused within the entire room. Right at this time, Duan Lingtian hugged little Fei, whose face was blushing, and fell asleep in satisfaction. The Su clan higher-ups once again gathered within the audience hall that very night. "Killing two of my Su clan's direct descendants within 2 nights in succession, looks like someone is intentionally making it difficult for our Su clan." Patriarch Su Boya's palm descended once again in rage, and the armrest of the new seat that had only been changed today was once again shattered. As the Grand Elder who sat below the Patriarch, Su Nan had an extremely unsightly expression as well. Last night, his nephew had died. Tonight, his cousin had died. He suddenly felt that the target of everything seemed to intentionally or unintentionally be him. Not only did Su Nan think in this way, even the other Su clan elders had similar thoughts. "Grand Elder, have you offended someone?" "Yeah, Grand Elder, if you've offended someone, you can speak up, and with this clue, we'll be able to investigate the assailant's identity." "Grand Elder, could it be that you have some difficulty?" "Grand Elder, I hope you can put the interest of the entire Su clan above everything else." One by one, the Su clan elders pointed the spearhead at Su Nan. The gaze of Patriarch Su Boya couldn't help but descend onto Su Nan, as currently even he was suspicious. "Patriarch, I, Su Nan, can swear that I absolutely have not offended anyone lately. If you really want to talk about conflict, then it should only be that Su Li and Duan Lingtian. However, it would be absolutely impossible for the two of them to have the ability to kill Su Li and Su Yang." Being misunderstood by so many people caused Su Nan's face to flush from anger, and within his heart, he hated that assailant to the bones. Su Li. Many of the Su clan elders present knew of who Su Li was, and they all asked, "What does this have to do with Su Li?" Su Nan took a deep breath and spoke of the dispute between him and Su Li, including the matter of Su Li having left Paladin Academy. When he first found out about this, he was extremely surprised as well. Never had he expected that for the sake of his friend, Duan Lingtian, and for the sake of taking account of his parents' safety, Su Li would actually be willing to give up his future. As far as he was concerned, Su Li's choice was truly hopelessly stupid. PFF'd. "Grand Elder, you're really capable, not even letting a child go." A Su clan elder who once had a good relationship with Su Li's father couldn't help but sneer and glance at Su Nan in disdain. As far as he was concerned, as a dignified Su clan elder, such actions were extremely infuriating. It's impossible for the culprit to be Su Li. As for that Duan Lingtian, although he's the son of Duan Rufeng, he hasn't returned to the Duan clan, and thus it's impossible for him to have such a capability. "Grand Elder, have you left something out?" Su Boya pondered for a moment before looking at Su Nan with a burning gaze. "Absolutely not." Su Nan shook his head with a certain expression. Su Boya frowned and pondered for a moment before speaking. The one thing in common with both Su Li's and Su Yang's murders was that after they were killed, their spatial rings vanished as well. Could it be that the person's objective was to seek wealth? If it's to seek wealth, then it can be explained, no matter was it. "Both Su Li and Su Yang were charge of a business under our Su clan," a Su clan elder said. "Pass down my command. Ask the people in charge of the various businesses to stay within the Su clan estate for the near future. I want to see if that person will dare to charge into my Su clan estate." Su Boya nodded before giving this order right away, and his eyes flickered with a cold and stern brilliance as he did so. In merely 2 days, 2 direct descendants of the Su clan had died. He, who was the Su clan's patriarch, lost face as well and felt great humiliation. At dawn the next day, the entire imperial city was bustling, and the news of the Su clan members dying in succession within 2 nights spread everywhere. Moreover, the members who died were direct descendant disciples of the Su clan. That Su clan couldn't have offended someone, right? Who knows? However, the 2 who died weren't good people. Yeah, it's better if more people like them were to die. Shish, softer. Are you courting death? If the members of the Su clan hear you, you can forget about living. No matter whether it was the imperial city, outer city or the inner city, everywhere was filled with similar discussions. "Your Highness, the 3 death soldiers we sent out yesterday haven't returned for an entire night." I'm afraid they're probably dead. Within a quiet and secluded pergola, the white-browed old man respectfully reported to the young man in luxurious clothes who sat within and savored fragrant tea. 3 nascent soul martial artists weren't able to take that Duan Lingtian's life. The young man in luxurious clothes, or in other words, the 5th prince's, face slightly sank. Looks like the Duan clan is really dutiful and is looking after this direct descendant disciple that rebelled against them. Your Highness, what you mean is that the Duan clan's members are protecting him? The white-browed old man was startled. The 5th prince snorted coldly as he asked, besides this, what other thing do you think he's able to rely upon? The white-browed old man went silent and only opened his mouth after a while. Your Highness, then should we still put down this matter for the time being? I heard that 2 direct descendants of the Su clan died in succession within 2 nights. Send people to investigate, and if you're able to investigate any clues, give it to the Su clan as a favor. Once it's done, at the time of the struggle for the seat of the emperor, when I want the Su clan to help me, I think that the Su clan's patriarch, Su Boya, won't refuse. The 5th prince's eyes flashed with a light of wisdom. Yes, the white-browed old man replied before leaving. Duan Lingtian, you repeatedly injured my cousin. Even if you have the members of the Duan clan protecting you in secret, you won't be able to prance around for long. A trace of a cold light flashed within the 5th prince's eyes. The ghastly shadow assassin organization could be said to be everywhere within the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Even in the Imperial City, there was a ghastly shadow point of operations. Inner City, in a remote corner. Very few people knew that the point of operations of the ghastly shadow within the Imperial City was precisely here. Deep into the night, a middle-aged man with ordinary appearance sneakily looked at his surroundings before walking into the ghastly shadow's point of operations. He entered the lobby and arrived before the counter. Target. Behind the counter, a stiff-faced young man spoke with a voice that emitted a bone-piercing ice coldness. It caused the middle-aged man to feel a chill run down his spine as he said, in panic, Duan Lingtian, 9th level of the core formation stage, grade 1 student of Paladin Academy. Paladin Academy? The young man's voice seemed to have a sense of scruples. He's a student that's put up outside the academy and doesn't live within Paladin Academy, the middle-aged man said. The way he spoke was as if he was reading a textbook. He had obviously been ordered by someone to put up this assignment. Deposit 200,000 silver. Confirmation in 3 days, the young man said, in a cold and indifferent voice. The middle-aged man withdrew a stack of silver from his pocket in a flurry and left in a flustered manner after he put down the silver.